And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's episode of Back Tales of Fisherman's Story. This is episode number 24. Tonight's guest, I'm sure you recognize him. It's Mr. Tim Scott, a.k.a. Epic Catfish. Welcome, Epic. How are you doing tonight?
Good, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing really well.
Tim Scott,
a.k.a. Epic Catfish.
Look at Jodi up there.
How are you doing tonight?
Rookie.
Yeah,
Can you hear that echo?
That was me, Rookie.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, Tom,
All right, we good?
Jodi, I've been pretty busy lately. The furniture business, switching things around at the shop. Matter of fact, I even built a hen house not too long ago.
Really?
We have, I think, 16 little chicks getting ready to grow up and make us some eggs.
Awesome. What kind you get? Do you remember?
Oh, geez, there's 3 kinds, and we had to get well, I guess and I'm no chicken expert, but the leghorns and the other ones, they're the normal ones that people get around the country, but we had to get some more cold hardy because, let's face it, we live where it's cold. And even though we're not too far north all the time, it's snow and cold. I mean, it's been freezing almost every night still. Everybody says, when are you going to go live? When are you going to go live? I said, well, I could go live, anytime, but no matter, because I don't care if I'm cold, but the fish, they decide that they don't really. Right here, it's basically still almost winter as far as the catfish are concerned. Mm-hmm. So, when you still have 42, 43 degree water, dipping down into 38, even if you get a 70 degree day here or there, they're just not ready to go. And I've gotten excited many times in my life and said, oh man, I'm going to go and we're going to go out in March and do this and April and all this. And they're just not. It's short bite window, a whole lot of effort for not much coming to the boat.
It's absolutely beautiful here, and they're biting like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to rub it in.
Yeah. As you might have heard, we've had a little bit of activity down on the dock too.
I did hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna enjoy hearing that story.
Yep.
Years ago when I used to run underwater cameras, and I think I've probably told this story before, I would go to my known wintering holes where there would be flatheads and channel cats, because of course up here we don't have blues. And I would put the camera down and see what was, going on. Because, a lot of times you can fish on them, but they're not really going to bite very much. Or, maybe you catch 5, 6, 7 fish. But it turns out that there's hundreds, if not thousands, in an area where you may only catch 10 fish, during the cold water period. And I really, really wanted to figure out what makes them tick. Why are they there? And then all of a sudden, when do they leave? And for 3 years, I went to the river for, every 3 days during this period of time. And, the benchmark is about April 15th when they actually moved out of the wintering. I mean, there were still some catfish there, but it went from like 4,000 or 5,000 down to 20. And they would move when it got warmer. Before April 15th. They would move when it got warmer, but all they would do is move laterally and go shallow, instead of in the pit, basically the depth of the hole. And sometimes they would move upstream a little bit or downstream, but they were always close, close enough that if that temperature crashed overnight, they were right back in their, safety spots. So, after 3 years, I was pretty convinced somewhere around mid-April, all of a sudden, and the temperature didn't have to change. See, that's one of the things that our fish up here, being in the in the basic cold winter zone, they don't don't vary a whole lot. You know, like sometimes I hear, you know, oh, they're up shallow in Tennyson, and then they're deep, and then maybe they moved here, maybe they moved there. You know, but ours are in classic holding zones during the cold water period. When it warms up, maybe you get a week of warm weather. Maybe it's 70 degrees, and all of a sudden the water temperature spikes 4, 5, 6 degrees. Before that sunlight that marks that diurnal situation, that you know, seasonal pattern, before that amount of daylight changes, they'll move, but not far. But once you get to that period, and you could have really cold temperatures even after that, you know, mid-April, you have really cold temperatures, but it's close enough that they're, I wouldn't say that they've learned, but I would say that Mother Nature has said, just like geese or ducks flying south for the winter. Well, it may still be warm, but they're already flying south.
Right.
It may still, you know, it may be cold, and they're still coming back north because they can't afford to wait too long. So it's just that fine line. It's kind of neat. So let's hear about the world famous dock and the giant fish you guys just caught, because I've been kind of off of YouTube, being busy like I've been, you know, doing furniture and all the other things. So let's hear about that tale.
Well, it was a cold night. Art and Josh were here from One Ton, and Kenneth Powell from Takedown Catfishing. He came over to fish with us, and myself, and it got down, I think it was like 38 degrees. You know, we had been sitting outside, and I finally said, I'm going to get in the Jeep and warm my feet up. I have foot neuropathy, so, you know, it's important that I keep my feet dry and warm. And I wasn't sitting in that Jeep. In fact, the heat hadn't even got warm yet. And Art's rod got buried off the end of the dock, and he said, yeah, this is a big one. It's a big one. And he hadn't even got to the rod yet, I don't think. You know, he hadn't even picked it up yet. And he knew by the takedown. And Josh grabbed the net and followed him out. So I said, I'm sure it's probably 30 or 40, or, you know, which has kind of become commonplace on the dock. We don't catch them that big all the time, but we catch them regularly enough. And so I said, well, I'm going to, you know, there's not a whole lot of room at the end of the dock. And with Art and Josh, they probably didn't need me standing down there in their way. So I was just kind of sitting there watching, and all of a sudden they got him near the dock, and he did a tail flip, and I just saw the sides of him, and my eyes lit up like saucers. I said, "Oh my God, it's a giant!" Kenneth, he was sitting in the Jeep with me, and so I ran down there, and I just couldn't believe it how big that was. And he got onto the dock at one point when we couldn't get him in the net, and he gave us a battle. He fought hard once he saw that dock, you know, and the net, and but they were able to land him. We only had, I think, half of them in the net. You know, I had a smaller net. I mean, it's not small, but not a huge one. It's not prepared for fish that large. And,
you know, Tom, they will curl, and I use a net that, I mean, I caught long enough fish that I can only get not even half. I would have to, really aim this thing, because it didn't have a really long bag. It had a big hoop, but not a long bag. And, you know, one of the common things was people fishing with me is, that's not going to fit in that net. I'd say, oh yeah, it is. I'm going to make it fit. So, that's kind
of, this had the large hoop, but it wasn't as deep, you know, for a fish that size. And, I was afraid he was going to fall out of the net when Josh tried to lift him up, but we got him on the dock. And, just to go back a little bit, the fish came out of a spot that we call the Hole of Hades, which is a big obstruction with a whole lot of all of our fishing line wrapped around it, and some braid and some heavy duty mono. And the spot is basically, if you throw into it, you leave your bait out there all night long. You fish for 8 hours, you don't move it, because if you do move it, it's going to be hung up in that crap. Okay. And you just hope that a fish picks your bait up and swims it out. And that's exactly what happened, you know, the other night. So it's
either a fish or you lose your equipment.
Yeah. You know, and sometimes sometimes they bury down in there and, you know, they get hung up and, you know, you try to get them to swim out and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But he just had luck on his side that night that thing came up and out of all that crap. You know, and it's kind of surreal after the fact, you know, we weren't like high-fiving and jumping up and down. And it's like, we were looking at each other like, I can't believe that just happened. You know, it's like, this is us, you know, a couple guys sitting on the dock throwing baits, you know, and
Yeah.
And I was so happy for it.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic. And you know, as we know that even if your waters has giants in it, to be basically ledgered in an area because it has a dock and, you know, it's comfortable and it's whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that the big fish are always there. Sometimes, right. and it kind of proves you guys fish it enough that big fish do move and they do become, you know, accessible at times. And, you know, when you're there, you know, the stars aligned and everything, right. and the heavens opened up and the angels sang, and all of a sudden you guys are witnessing a 94-pound fish. That's fantastic. Yeah.
And, you know, the thing is that Josh caught a 47 that night as well. And compared to that one, I was like, yeah, okay. You know, you got a little one.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
And it took away his thunder.
47.
Yep. Yeah, and then 2 nights later, I was out there with Aaron, and I caught what was now my PB of 56 pounds, 14 ounces. So pretty much in the same spot. But
so I've been following you guys for a little bit, and I've noticed a couple of things. When it's tough, and then you'll have those periods where you got big fish moving through, and you'll catch some now and again. Otherwise, you know, 10, 20, 30 pounds is pretty big, and sometimes not very many. Sometimes there is quite a few. You know, so that kind of tells a story in itself.
Yeah, it appears it's a transition. You know, we live on Lake Gaston. We're about 7 miles below the Kerr Dam Kerr Lake. And there's a channel from the old river. The old Roanoke River channel is what runs through our lake when they flooded it. And on the edge of the top of the ledge where the Hades hole is, where all that obstruction is, there's probably only about 6-7 feet of water. And then it immediately drops down to 25, 26 feet. And that's where all of our bigger fish are either right on the very edge of that ledge or down off of it, down into the really deep water.
Well, no wonder it's hard to get fish out of it. Because, I mean, I'm assuming it's quite a ways out before that lip. So,
yeah, it's about 65, 70 yards to get out there.
Okay. So just to get to the lip, it's probably what? At least 50.
Yeah.
So you got another 20 yards to be down into it.
Right.
That's pretty interesting. Now, do you suppose the edge of it is basic rock, or is it clay?
It's it's pretty much clay, but what it is they sawed off all the trees that, you know, and they just leveled them. So there's all big stumps, and one of the other things they do have is around the stumps they have the mussel beds. And I don't know how many fish we catch that are out there in that deep water or right on the edge of it. And when we're trying to unhook them, they're pooping mussel shells onto the dock, you know. So we know that's what they're there for.
Interesting.
Yep. So you know, last year I did the thing where I tried to fish for the 365, and the interesting part of that is I took a picture of each and every fish and with the date in it, and how big it was. And it seems that last year Aaron got a 61. We had a 50, a 48, a 35, and they all came less than 10 days apart in the middle of May. Okay. So it's like that's, you know, it seemed to be when all the bigger fish were moving up. And I don't remember if the winter was colder last year, but it seemed like, you know, that recently we've been having some of those bigger fish moving up in April as opposed to, you know, a couple, 3-4 weeks later.
So obviously, probably you show a dip in the amount of fish that you're catching when your population of fish is on the spawn. I mean, that's a a known complaint all over the country.
Mhm. Right.
And so when do you suppose your spawn is?
It seemed to be late June is when the bite really started to tail off last year.
Okay.
Or the only thing we would be getting were the eater size fish, the 8 or 9 pounders and smaller. And we just couldn't catch a big fish in the summer to save our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It was terrible.
Now, when does it pick back up?
September is when we really started to nailing them again.
And that makes sense because we're about a month different in our catfish calendar between where you're at and between where I fish. Not necessarily where I live, but where I fish, because it's pretty rough in July here.
Mm-hmm.
June's pretty good. May for channel cats and sometimes flatheads. June is my big flathead go-to month. And then the blues are very unreliable. Plus, the Mississippi is really volatile as far as its flood stage at that period.
Right.
So I usually don't focus on blues until about the first week of August. And usually, almost if I go like say the last week of July, it's kind of iffy. It may be on, it may be not, but usually it's usually off still. But by the first weekend of August, it's usually pretty fire.
Yeah.
So August, September, October, and then it starts to trail back off in November because my fish, being so high on the Mississippi, start trickling their way back down.
Okay.
With their migration to overwinter.
We're lucky in that Kerr Lake is the Army Corps of Engineers lake, and that lake can rise or drop 30, 35 plus feet, but Gaston, because of all the homeowners that live on the water, we have to stay within a foot above or below the mean level. So, if it gets too high, they let water out the end to the dam at the far end. If it gets too low, they let it in on the Kerr. So the water pretty much stays stable all of the time. Now they do open the dam and let the current in one end and out the other, and that seems to always certainly help us catch fish. But we don't have that rise and then fall in water like that a lot of places have.
Ours will, especially in the early part of the season, rise 3 or 4 feet in a week or less, sometimes a day.
Yeah.
When you think it's going to be stable, because I always look at the hydrograph. I always look at what it's been, what it's predicted to go to, and what it is now, so I can make a decision whether I want to go or put it off. Because sometimes I have to make a decision whether I can even go fishing, if it's even worth it to me, because I have to weigh what I have to get done before I go, and weigh what I have to get done when I get back. So sometimes it's really not it's not worth the work sacrifice. And I thought for sure I was going to be 50 some years old and not have catfish regulators. Seem like most big fish is caught with no current.
Yeah, that's true. The night that Art caught his, they ran water that morning from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and we caught that fish around midnight, and they hadn't been running water all day long. And then the next night when I caught mine, the water had been turned off.
Interesting.
Yep.
So do you suppose that since there's no current, that they have to move around and look for food instead of wait for food to come to them?
That's a good point. I don't know. I hadn't thought of it that way, because being from my bass background, it was always when the water's moving, the fisherman, because the bait's moving. But that's you're probably right. I definitely never thought of that way.
Well, when I used to fish the James with noted guide Chris Harris, which was a friend of mine, whenever the tide changed to basically dead tide, he basically switched over to live baits, and we wouldn't move location, but of course it would change us from one side to the other. But while it was slack tide, he would use baits that he felt were going to attract fish, and this is blues we're talking about. And he would suspend them, and we wouldn't necessarily catch them at the cover. Just say we're fishing a sunken Civil War ship.
Right.
Before, when there was current, we were anchored up above it, traditionally throwing into it, to the base of it, to the edge of it, and all this. So once that tide was getting ready to change, and we would use down rods in that situation, but it'd be a rare thing for big blues, to come from the area we were targeting and just kind of come up underneath the boat back in those days. Now, I'm not so sure if that's still the case. I think the population right now is big enough that you can catch them in just about any position, superior or negative position. But what I found interesting about that was that if the current is bringing them food or directing them, then when that current dies, then they have to get up and move themselves. Now, do they always do it? No, they don't. But sometimes, if they're active enough, you be at the right place at the right time.
Right. That's kind of what I figured. The fish, as the water warms, they get more active, and it kind of follows the bass logic with that. And certainly on slack tide and bass fishing is when you move the boat or when you eat your lunch.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'll bet it is. And it's true for rivers too. When they shut that current down, it's time to eat lunch. It's time to catch bait. It's time to do whatever, because you just about don't have a prayer. I mean, you do. You always have a prayer, but the odds are not very likely.
Yeah. Let's see if I can. We got quite a few people. We got 50 people watching right now.
Nice.
Jodi, can you shout out some people?
Froze. I can.
Your laptop.
At the very end, my laptop. We got Fishing with Squirrel, James Kirkpatrick, Lance McCouguy, Annette Morgan, Catfish Regulators, Fishing Chick, Michelle is all mine, Creole Catfishing, Two Stands Fishing, Mr. Duggar Fishing, more favorites, Ryan Lee Catfishing, David Smith, howdy do. We got Quiet Man Curtis, Avid Fisherman, Chrissy Brown, El Catfish Grande, and I think that's all I can read. Lee Evans, Catfish Kentucky Outdoors, Sunfish Assassin, Danny Stone Outdoors, Brian B. Catfishing, and that's all I can see. I can't go back no farther.
You get Chris Everett, Don R., Matt, Wannabe Outdoors, Buck Williams, Bobcat. I know you said Stan, Susquehanna Stan, your boy Troy, Dale Hayslip, Avid's in the house. Welcome. You said Lance, Bugman 22. Got quite the crowd. I think that brings me to the bottom.
We were all lucky enough to attend the CatCon there in Kentucky and meet a lot of those people, and I'm not saying it pretty much changed my life, because you get to talking to people and all that stuff, and then you get to meet them, and it just it was an amazing thing for me, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I went there with I didn't even want to buy anything. I went there to meet everybody, and I have enough rods, I have enough reels. There was really nothing that I really needed. So I didn't really, actually, the whole first day, I didn't do anything other than stand by the YouTube booth and chat and trade stickers with people.
There was only one thing you needed, Tom.
Yeah.
That catfish, that Epic Catfish cutout, that plywood one that I had with me.
Yep. I was lucky. I remember you had it sitting on the table, and somebody asked you if it was for sale, and then you said that it was, and then they said, I was just kind of kidding. And I said, no, really, is it for sale? And we made a deal, and I brought it home in Art's car, because Art drove me out there. So we had to make room for it, and I had to have people get it back to the hotel. I think it was Michael that helped us get it back to the car, back to the hotel. And funny story is, it's upstairs. It's sitting on my pool table at the moment because when Miss Michelle, it's all mine. We had I told her I want to put it on the wall right behind me so that we could have it in the broadcast. And this is actually at our kitchen table. And she won that battle. All right. So we had what I will say, what we call verbal judo, where we spar back and forth. And she won that round. So I said, well, that's just as good, because I think I'd rather hang it suspended from the ceiling above our bed in the bedroom, so that when I can go to bed, I can dream of catfish, flathead, big flatheads. And
that's great.
She won that round too. So it's going to go up. We have a game room with a pool table in it, and it's going to go up in there. But Michelle she did all of the decorating in that room. She's an interior decorator. So she painted, she picked the colors, she made the drapes herself, she did everything to that room. So trying to find the right spot, something has to be moved because the room has been completed for years now. So, but it's going up in there. That we've agreed it is. We just have to decide how we're going to move stuff around before we hang it. But it's going up, I swear to God.
All right. Well, one of these days you'll have to take a picture of it when it's up and post it.
Yeah, I will. Yep. Matter of fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say, you may not know this, but we have a remodel going on. We're going to redo our kitchen. Or Michelle wants to redo our kitchen. If I don't get my fish hung up, she ain't getting no kitchen. I said it. Now she's in the other room with the door shut. So if you hear gunshots, it's just, yeah. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's going up.
You ain't gonna get fed.
Well, I do need to lose a little bit of weight.
I think Shawn's in Catfish Heroes.
Hey,
so hello to him.
Shawn?
Great. Oh, by the way, I did. I'm sorry, Jodi, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to say, in the description, we have your link tonight, and I also put Shawn's link up in there as well.
Nice.
Yep.
That's what I was Jodi. I was just going to remind everybody to please subscribe to them because they have epic fishing events this summer. You don't want to miss them. They go on travels. I mean, it's just great to sit and watch.
Right.
So you definitely want to be subscribed. Subscribe to both of them. It's a great show, a great time.
And there's danger involved. We have danger. We have high drama. We've got trees coming down to get us. We get giant fish, and you never know what Shawn and I are going to do or say.
They drive through the lock. I mean, and there's big fish.
Yep, and sometimes
heartbreak.
we take in the truck with us and do all that stuff. And sometimes we play music and get demonetized and all that. What's going to happen?
Brian taking that to heart. New show coming soon, Starving LG. Michelle's going to stop cooking for me if I don't do her kitchen.
There you go.
I just saw Lisa Elliott's in the house. Welcome, Lisa.
All right, well, we get started. Let's start with something you're doing currently. Like what are you doing work-wise? Because I know you've been busy. You've been off YouTube a little bit in chat where you've been so busy. So what's some of the stuff you're doing?
Well, wasn't this last March, but it was the March before. The company I worked for decades, like 3 decades, I designed I don't know how many thousands of pieces of furniture, built the manufacturing system, did all that stuff, decided, well, they don't really need me anymore. So I was, I kind of got in, and I got that through an email at like 9:00 at night one night. And I just about panicked. I thought, what am I going to do? I still got kids at home. I'm nowhere near, when I plan to retire, all this stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to have to, move to New York or California or some stupid place I don't want to live. And I just kind of worked it out to where I started my own furniture company because I didn't want to move. I didn't want to work for another company that was going to take me for granted or whatever, you know. So I am in the process of doing what I've always done, and that's developing lines of furniture that are unique and get built and get sold all over the country. So we're building some of it. There's some other, I've designed some stuff for some other companies to build in which I get a royalty from. Yeah, jeepers. I think I'm up to my, just since then, like 16th bedroom set.
Wow.
You know, but that's all the dressers, you know, nightstands, 3-drawer, 4-drawer, 5-drawer, 6-drawer, 7-drawer, 8-drawer dressers, beds of all kinds of, from very big grandiose beds all the way down to something you put in your spare bedroom. We do a lot of reclaimed products where we'll use barnwood. We'll use things that were kind of rehabbed or taken from a building, or even corn cribs and things like that, and make some really unique stuff out of it. You know, we deal with a lot of new wood, a lot of walnuts, a lot of cherries, ash, oaks, things like that. I do have some pictures because I know Jodi said she was going to ask me about that, because it's really hard to describe. Everybody says, well, you know, where can we see your stuff? Well, I don't have a website because I basically design things for the wholesale market. Okay. So the biggest thing about a wholesale market is there's a lot of furniture companies out there, but not very many people with their own unique ideas. So whenever my stuff gets put out on the web or whatever, it gets copied pretty quickly. And because there's almost nothing a guy can do as far as protecting, you know, rights to copyright. You know, I mean, jeepers. If I had to copyright, you know, or patent 16 bedroom sets in a year, I'd be broke before I even got off the ground. So I did. I do have some pictures. I should have sent them to Jodi or you, so you could just put them up on screen. But here's you know, here's some of the. I don't know if anybody can even see this, but like here's something that I've done in the past. This isn't anything new. This was you know, part of the stuff that I've done. I don't really have any like pictures like from catalogs and things like that. I'd show you that one. Oh boy. Here's kind of an interesting one here. You know, like stuff like that. That's got a inlaid top. It's got copper. It's got the barnwood to it. It's it's a high end rustic. It's not rough. It's the finish is really good. It's you know, things are picked to look the same way. There's that. And then let me see if I can find some other stuff here. Oh, even, you know, even stuff like, if anybody's an antique fan, they'll kind of know what this is right here. This is kind of patterned after a certain 1900s antique. But I have literally thousands and thousands. And I mean, here's just one book. I mean, there's just one book, and it's that thick. So, and there's about 19 books. So, you know, but things go in style and they go out of style. Oh, yeah. Shawn's actually seen it in person. Matter of fact, there's a coffee table I've got to build for him here pretty shortly, I think, if I can ever get to it. Yeah, it keeps us busy. We at this point we deliver our own stuff, and so I take it, you know, 8 hours north. Actually, we do a photo shoot the following day, and we end up staying up there because we have to, you know, do certain things and have meetings and talk and stuff like that. So, you know, that happens quite a bit. So I am kind of short on time, but things are coming along good enough that I think Shawn and I can get away on the weekends come monster season.
Yeah.
Just got my boat back from from the repair shop too, because I had the well, if anybody was watching our lives, if I let my boat sit more than an hour, I would have trouble starting it. Well, that's because of
I remember that. Yep.
Poor gas quality tears up the fuel system after a while, and the little diaphragms get a little weak, and they get little, pinholes in them and stuff like that. So, and I have to go get it yet. And you never know if a boat is truly fixed. Just because it came back from the shop doesn't mean that it's actually fixed. You got
I know that.
And that's one thing about the Mississippi. It's not a good idea to have an unreliable boat on Sunday night when no one's out. And, you got to go to work the next day. I don't know what I have been stranded a couple times and had to, jeepers, here's one story. So I had a fuel leak show up on my old boat. And it was Sunday night, and we were, I'll bet we were 5 miles downstream. And I ran out of gas. Shouldn't have run out of gas. No. Not at all. But there was a pinhole leak somehow, somewhere, and we ran out of gas. So I ended up walking almost 5 miles through the Mississippi swamp to get up onto the interstate so I could hitch a ride to go get gas and then walk my silly ass back through that. And here I am carrying 5 gallons of gas over my head in this deep of Mississippi River swamp for hundreds.
Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah, that was
wow.
Yeah.
That is awful.
Nice, Art. Nice.
That's a picture of that fish he's holding me coming.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a nice avatar you got there, Art. I got to meet Art at CatCon too. That was kind of special. But back to the furniture thing, I have no furniture that I bought. I made every single piece of furniture in my house, including all the woodwork and design all the metal work. This behind me, that's actually mica, which is actually a see-through stone. The kitchen cabinets, did all those. I got a man cabinet over there, all kinds of different stuff, all the beds, I've kind of raised my kids like doing things for the house on the weekends, and they both turned into excellent furniture builders. So my oldest one works with me, 60 hours a week, and he's pretty darn fantastic.
Well,
excellent.
Now, do you have any girls, or are they all boys?
Nope, all boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but he's quite the work beast like I used to be. I still try, but I work smarter. But when it comes to, picking up one big giant piece of furniture myself and running it across the shop, no, he does that.
Now, do any of your boys like to fish with you?
Do they like to fish with me? As long as I'm not filming, they have some aversion to being filmed. So they don't think that's real cool yet. And I told them, I said, like the light effects. Yeah, thank you. No, I told them they'll appreciate it one day. I said, they may hate it now, being in the boat and being on a YouTube thing or being on a TikTok or whatnot, but they'll appreciate it one day. And I told them, I said, I wished I would have been able to film some of the awesome, crazy stuff I've done in my life.
Yeah.
Some of the gigantic.
You mentioned TikTok.
What's that?
You mentioned TikTok. You've been filling your time with TikTok quite a bit.
Well,
while you're YouTube right now. Yeah.
And one thing about it is the investment in time is so minuscule for TikTok compared to what I put into YouTube. I may do a 3-minute, kind of quasi fast paced, action packed, kind of a condensed version of what I would put on YouTube. But, I really can't, I can't justify putting those kind of things on YouTube all the time, because the people that follow me on YouTube, they want information. They don't just want to be wowed by a couple of silly things. And, yeah, there's a big fish. And, Shawn, maybe I dropped my sandwich on the shad pile or whatever. I mean, that's not what they're all about. What they're all about is, learning something and getting an experience. So, and I may not be the fastest editor in the world, but, like a 25, 30-minute thing, I might have 25, 30 hours in. And that doesn't, that doesn't count filming it. Because I usually have 3 views, and I try to catch the best action with the 3 views, and do all that stuff, and I gotta edit out 9,000 cuss words, and all this, and and you're constantly going back and forth, and you're saving it. And the other problem I've got is my computer it's more like a dinosaur. It likes to be real slow, So by the time I'm done with a 20-minute thing, it's huge, and it doesn't like to open, and it doesn't like to save, and it doesn't like to, I got to restart my computer 2 or 3 times. So that is one thing I plan on doing, is getting a new computer with let's just say the computer I got right now is like an old Chevette. It's slow. It's dependable. It's slow. I need something that's got more of a motor to it. To say that. So that I don't spend so much time that I don't have. And I plan on doing more YouTube videos, but I really do need to get that done. I mean, I've got stuff I filmed from last year I still haven't put out because I just don't have the time to do it justice.
Yeah.
Now,
What
do you think that
your TikTok name? Is it Epic Catfishing? Is that how they find you on TikTok?
It's just Epic Catfish. There's a lot of people that think my channel is Epic Catfishing. It's just Epic Catfish, just like you see it right there. And so I suppose I could have named it Epic Catfishing, but that wasn't my thing. Was I named the channel after the one fish that I actually filmed. I've actually caught bigger ones in the past that I never filmed, but you can't really talk about it. If you didn't film it and you ain't got pictures, it didn't happen. So I just don't focus on that. Except for I do drag up some old pictures once in a while and throw them up, because it's kind of fun doing that. And one thing about the TikTok thing is I can go through my phone while I'm driving to work and do a quick, whatever, and you stay relevant, and you end up getting, I mean, a 5 or 6 second video gets a ton of views for some reason. The longer it is, it seems that it gets less views.
Okay.
now,
Tom, you got something you want to say? I've been over talking you.
no, I got a little bit of a delay here. I'm sorry about that, talking over you. I was wondering if you're seeing any benefit for the YouTube from the TikTok. Are people from TikTok coming over to the YouTube?
Yeah, there is. There's quite a bit, and vice versa. I mean, there's a lot of the people, and it's so cool that the people that follow you on YouTube and you get to talk to, like, I'm sure there's people in the chat right now that have commented on my TikTok stuff, as well as the people that I'm still pinching myself about this. Like my very first video, the people that commented are still commenting. 9 out of 10 of them are still commenting today. They're just like I said, that one thing, some of the greatest people I've ever met. And it's a pretty special thing. YouTube is definitely different than besides the same you have your YouTube crowd that goes onto TikTok, and they compliment you and talk and ask questions and all that stuff. It's pretty fantastic.
Aaron has a question. What can we do to make DNR more acceptable for folks that maybe have a trophy fish? I think he's talking about that Mississippi record fish that expired.
Aaron, I've been highly frustrated about this for 30 years. Well, maybe not 30, probably 25. But the first state record flathead I had in my boat, I think I was maybe 24, 25, 26 years old, somewhere around there. And I mean, this thing was like 62 inches long. It was every bit as long as the giant blue cat that was in that video.
Mhm.
Somewhere approaching 90 to 100 pounds. So I called the DNR. I said, hey, I've definitely got a state record here. And I'd like to release it. Oh, no, we're not coming out there. I said, what do you mean? I'm right here at such and such boat ramp. I've got the fish in the water, all this stuff. And I said, oh, no. Here's the procedure. Take it home, wrap it in newspaper, and put it in the freezer. We'll get to you at some point in the next 2 weeks. I said, well, there's no new state record. I said, this thing's going back no matter what. Right. And I even tried to do that several other times when I had what I felt was a record size, either state or world record size. And not one time would the DNR of Illinois ever come out there. Now, I've heard since that they've kind of decided that they're going to, but that doesn't mean that they will. Depends on what area you're in and all that stuff. So I would say it depends on the area you're at and how they value fish. Whether the state of Illinois really doesn't care about catfishing at all. They care about the commercial aspect and how many pounds and how much revenue they get from the taxes on fish flesh. Our state doesn't really care about tourism. The other thing is that although the head wouldn't say they're appointee, but they are a political position. Everybody underneath them are like kind of like tenured bureaucrats. Mm-hmm. So they get to do whatever they really want to do. They're really not, how we say, well, we pay the salaries of policemen and politicians. Well, they don't really give two craps about us. If you hadn't noticed, it's all about them. So I have run into some good DNR people, but I've run into some pretty corrupt bad ones too. And one said, yeah, this is kind of a long story, and I'll try to make it short because we only have 2 hours. So we were kind of involved in this push to create a trophy fishery for flatheads in the state of Illinois, whether it be on the Fox, the Rock, or the Mississippi. We wanted to make sure to try to get one. And we volunteered to help with all kinds of things. And not just we had 4,000 members. And so at any given time, if the DNR needed help with a study here, a study there, I would help them. Some other people would. We'd have volunteers do things. There was people involved in trash pickups. There's all kinds of things just to get this a catch and release situation for trophy fish going. Well, the DNR pretty much in all of their studies that we even helped them with would kind of fudge the numbers. I got the reports. I know what those numbers said. And when it came out in the newspaper or the magazines, it was a total snow job. And, so I was kind of upset about that. And I called, I said, I was basically on a first name basis with second in command. First in command was Bill Bertrand. Never really talked to him, but it goes from the head guy, and then they got 4 other guys, and it's kind of like a military operation. So I was basically talking to a 3-star general, and he says to me, you're not getting regular. This is when nobody was around, of course. I was in the boat. Everybody else got out of the boat. He said, hold on a second, Tim. He said, you're not going to get regulations. I said, what? He said, you want to know why? I said, sure. Why don't you tell me, Dan? He said, because I don't believe in it. And he basically just told me, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of went, what? But anyway, a good thing that did come out of it, because I did spend a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of writing and a lot of, I wrote in North American Fisherman. I wrote in other magazines about it. it let me know that I was kind of wasting my time. But I also met some guys from Missouri that were pro catfishing and trophy regulations. So that was one of the things, you know, as well as Tennessee, as well as, well, Kentucky's a whole different ball of wax. But, you know, I had met through that work some other guys that were actually trying to do some things, and some things have been done. There's a regulation that happened on the Fox where Mark catfish and crappie, you know, fishes. And I'm not saying I'm responsible for it. I was part of that early grassroots type movement to try to get something done, but there was other people that took it farther. It was awesome. Yeah, Freddie, Jodi, Captain's Log, epic. Yeah. I do enjoy doing the Captain's Log. It kind of helps me kind of let people know what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
you know,
that's great. I love that.
If that's if that's anything special, I suppose. But no, to get back to that regulation thing, I believe that, especially when I was a guide, and there were other guides here in Illinois, that a trophy catfish is worth a lot more alive and swimming than it is on someone's dinner plate. Especially, you know, you get a 50-year-old catfish with a, you know, a carcinogen list and insecticide list that it harbors in its body as long as your leg. I mean, holy crap! The mercury levels were, you know, out of this world. Still had PCBs, which they've been outlawed since the 70s, and still had traces of DDT in some of the fish that were only 40 pounds. So, and you know how long ago DDT was basically taken off the market. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why I know some of these catfish are really, really old. But just remember one thing. If you're trying to get trophy regulations, if you're trying to get people to come out and actually take care of fish, big fish are really, really difficult to deal with as far as keeping them alive. I kind of keep myself to a time minimum. And or maximum, as I should say. So if it's an epic fight in 70 plus degree temperatures, I try 3 to 4 minutes max out of the water. And if it's less than 70 degrees, you can have them out of the water a little bit longer, maybe up to 10 minutes. You can probably have them up to 20 minutes, but I like to kind of half that because I want to see the fish that I catch live and do well. And you know, I was an official at a King Cat's Cabela's tournament, a championship tournament, and I saw some fish that were in some pretty bad shape, and unlucky for the contestants, old Epic Catfish was the decider of whether that fish was going to make it or not. And I disallowed several fish that were still barely kicking, but you knew they weren't going to make it. Once they start to lose color, once they start to lose that color, you know what I'm saying? It's not color, it's hue. Once a vibrant look goes to like really, really, I don't know how to describe it. You know, instead of banana yellow, if that banana turns like almost tan, you know it's not going to make it. And they're like, it's still moving, it's still moving. I'm like, yeah, it's not going to survive. You know, so that is one thing. So can we expect a DNR guy to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, bring a scale out to the river, meet you at a boat ramp, weigh the fish, picture the fish, take a DNA sample? Because believe it or not, there's been DNR officials that have categorized world and not world, but state records nonetheless. You know, our state record channel cat for Illinois is a misidentified blue, and they've never rectified it. So no one has the chance of getting an actual channel cat record because Illinois doesn't have any channel cats that are 45 pounds.
Wow.
Shawn says people got to stop eating wild-caught catfish from stores.
Yep. And you know, the DNR knows it, the FDA knows it, and they all hold a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
I mean, eating wild caught catfish. I wouldn't feed wild caught big catfish to my worst enemies, people I don't like, let alone people I do like. A lot of people are like, what do you do with that? Do you eat it? I'm like, no, I don't eat 80, 90, 100-pound catfish. What are you, silly? You know, because they don't know anything else, I guess.
Yeah. Well, not too many years ago, people kept everything they caught, really. But that's what they did around here. They wouldn't go out and set trout lines, and they'd freeze it and put it in the freezer, and they kept everything. But now it's getting to where people's more educated and younger people's growing up, and they don't do that now.
Jodi, mercury is a neuron blocker. And neurons are the little things that form in your brain that grow together, and then they have a little electrical signal like this. Yeah. And since mercury is a neuron blocker, you can't tell how smart you did not get. So everybody that has eaten them for years goes, hadn't hurt me yet. I'm like, well,
I know.
That's hard. That's a hard one to prove.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Ain't killed
me. Yeah, I mean,
yet.
there's signs of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I fish around the.
I honestly believe it's up to the individual person. I mean, I'm not an advocate of telling people they can't do this or they can't do that. You know, I think people are smart enough to make their own decisions, and by God, they should be able to make their own decisions. But let's educate ourselves a little bit on the true thing. But here's the other problem. There's so much information out there that is not very right and kind of misleading and but the DNR, the state officials and everybody, they're very reluctant to tell you how polluted, like the Illinois River, which is 20 minutes from my house. It's a major tributary of the Mississippi River. It extends from up by where Mark lives, up in Chicago, goes all the way down past me and enters about Havana, Illinois, which is about 2/3 down the state. That river just now got put on all catfish do not eat, even little ones.
Huh.
The do not eat, not eat one a month or one every week. And it's not just women and pregnant children, children and pregnant women. It's do not eat them.
Wow.
And you would think that after the Clean Water Act, that it would still be getting better. But there's things in our water that binds to the silt. And as soon as we have, all of a sudden the toxin levels will go down. But then again, we get some sort of, new herbicide and this and that. And you're like, oh, geez. Now, am I super afraid of it? No, not at my age. But, young people, I'd knock it right out of my kids' hands. I'd be like, you're not eating that.
Yeah.
Might as well eat that spoonful of mercury. Right out of the old thermometer.
Wow.
Like those big hybrid choppers.
Catfish stay out of the water. Pork chop, the colder the water, the longer they can stay out because they're not using up their stored oxygen. So just like with cold water holds a lot more oxygen. A fish that is also cold holds a lot more oxygen, needs less energy. So they do really well in the cold water, anything under about 50 degrees. But every single 5 degrees after that, you got to be a little bit more careful. The hottest water, you got to really take care of them. I mean, make sure that they're not out of the water more than 3, 4, 5 minutes. If you want them to not expire at some point soon after you release them, they may swim away and look good. And I know this because I used to bring them back in tanks that had better oxygenated, better, cleaner water, a little bit cooler water than the actual river that they came from, a little bit. But I would have some post-catch mortality if the water was warmer. So I started bringing them back only in cold water. And for some reason, they just, and it depends on the fight and it depends on everything else. I mean, it just does. I don't think there's anybody that can really tell you the absolute answer of how long you keep a catfish out of water. Now, there's people that tell you can have them out of the water for a half an hour. Just put something wet over them. Well, I don't believe that myself. You know, and just look at all the tournaments today. Most of them have minimum requirements for live wells. You have to have such and such a bigger system, one that replaces the water enough in case they puke, blah blah blah. I mean, there's a whole list of things. I just say my general rule is 5 minutes is pretty much the max. I like to keep them out of water no matter what. People that drown in cold water have a better chance of revival than people that, yeah. Fish are the same way. Better chance of revival in cooler temps. Absolutely right.
Yep, great point.
The Ville.
Yeah, I was wondering, Tim, the other night when we caught Art's fish, well, he caught Art's fish. We were wondering, we were worried about getting the fish back in the water, but it was like, Mo, Larry, and Curly trying to get a picture and get this thing lifted up without dropping it. And Art had mentioned that he felt that the fish, that it was getting a little bit clammy because the water had run off of it and all that. And I got to thinking after he'd said that, maybe if that's going to happen again, we could have a bucket of water or something there that we could just, keep putting water on him until we got the picture. And we did release him. He swam away fine. Yeah. But that got me thinking there ain't no reason why we couldn't have a bucket of water to drop on that fish and keep him doing better.
One thing that you said right there is important, because once they start to get sticky, touching on your clothes, they start losing their slime coat. Now, that doesn't matter right now during the release, but scraping that slime coat's like their immune system. Right. So, I mean, I just always say, yeah, you're going to get slimed, but if it gets dry and gets scraped up, I know that's a problem when you have them in a long-term situation. I have to medicate it. If slime comes out, it's just good. And in that, and there's several of my videos, you will see us actually pour water on the fish when we have them out. Especially big ones with monumental fights. Yeah. 30, 40, 50 pounders that, they only take 10 minutes, but I'm talking about those ones that take a half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour in that rage of current. Yeah, we try to baby them a little bit.
Cool. Let's see if we have any other. If anybody has questions, please start putting them in the chat. We're about an hour in. Tim's graciously going to give us another hour. So please make sure you try to put the red question mark or the stop sign or something so we see your question. And if we miss it, please put it back in again. We'll try to get to everybody that we can. Jodi, do you have anything else? Any questions?
Yeah, he mentioned writing for a magazine. How many publications do you have? Have you written for?
You mean how many have I been published in?
Yeah.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, probably 6, somewhere around there.
Wow.
North American Fisherman, Kansas Angler, In Fisherman, various other, like smaller publications. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the fact that I was the editor of the Pro Cats magazine when it was on, so that was, 20 articles every 3 months, and they were pretty important stuff, studies on, temperatures and, fishing things and, patterns and, large fish and reports on this and reports on that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we know all about your fishing and your furniture making and your work. What do you do for play besides fishing when you're at home?
I actually love to fish for my play. That's
but
pretty much all I do. Everybody's like, hey, are you a hunter? I'm like, heck no, there's fish to be caught. So yeah, it's work and fish. I work so that I can fish.
I thought you liked pow pow.
What's that?
I thought you liked pow pows. Guns.
Oh, I do. But but that's like, I mean, yes, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe in being prepared, and I believe in doing all this stuff, and I do like those. I love tannerite. I mean, who doesn't love tannerite if you've ever experienced the explosion and the chest pummeling and, all that? Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. But, yeah, it doesn't come close to fishing. What's up, El Gato? How's it going, Chris? I feel it'd be such a well, an older one, I don't like it as much because, I used to, be able to do a whole, maybe I couldn't do a whole lot more than I do now, but I just didn't feel as bad the next day as I do now, I guess. One of the biggest myths out there that a lot of people believe is true. 2 stands. Oh boy, let's see. I could list you a bunch of myths, but let me see if I can figure out okay, so the buried in the mud thing. You hear that expression. I do believe people hear that expression and think that they literally bury themselves in the mud like a soft-shelled turtle. They don't. All that they're doing is contacting the mud, whether it's, like a ledge like this, and maybe you'll see mud all over the side of a fish. You'll see mud up underneath and, like that. They're not sitting in like pudding type mud and covering themselves. And I've heard people say that. I've heard people say, oh, they're buried so far in the mud that they'll, they're not. And like, no, they're not. Please do not get the idea that they're literally buried in the mud. Is all that info from Broadcast archived somewhere, or is all that information gone? Whiskers and Stripes, I do believe it is. I do know one thing. I've got an old Gen 1 hard drive still that has all that information, but I tried to retrieve it, and I'm going to have to pay somebody to get it. And it's got, literally thousands of giant catfish photos that I've lost over the years. I lost a phone in Grass Lake in upper Minnesota one time, and I didn't have my pictures backed up. There's like 8,000 fishing photos, 20 foot down. I also lost a phone on the Mississippi in one of the better flathead spots, so I couldn't even dive to go get it because it's 25 feet of boiling current ahead of it. So yeah, I started archiving the pictures that I've got now. But yeah, all that information. Matter of fact, most of it exists up here still, and I talk about it, on YouTube.
We have a comment from Jarrell, JBT. Just want to say Tim is the baddest man in the business, passionate about fishing and catfish master.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. JBT. And I maybe I'm just the nerdiest, most obsessed. I don't. I take it as a good thing. Thank you very much. But yeah, I'm a little bit. My wife still calls me catfish nerd a lot. Like, all right, catfish boy, what are you doing? I'm like thinking about catfishing. Yeah, that's what I figured, she said.
Now, have you done anything with the tagging and releasing of catfish?
Yeah, I did until the state of Illinois deemed it. What did they deem it? They deemed it illegal because they felt that it was like graffiti. You know how the elites are. They think that nobody's smart enough to do anything but them because you don't have any, maybe some people don't have formal training in it. It's just common sense. It's not that hard. They're little bitty tags, blah, blah, blah. But they don't want anybody else being able to come to their own conclusions. They want to feed you their opinion. So they made it illegal, and they basically said it was like vandalizing. So they made it illegal. I did catch a bunch of fish that were tagged in Missouri and that swam up into the Keokuk area. Matter of fact, we caught on one anchor 3 flatheads that were tagged, and we called those in, and they had moved about 9 miles from where they were. Let's see, I've caught other fish that were tagged. I caught some giant northern pike that were tagged a couple times. And I think I was, I fished with hook catfish one time, and we caught a tagged sturgeon, which was pretty cool. But most of the giant catfish, the tags don't stay. And I talked with some DNR guys about that. And they used to do it in different ways. They would lip tag them. That never lasted. Then they would they would put a band around the base of their dorsal spine. And for some reason, catfish are so good at, if something irritates them, they scratch it. So those didn't last very good. The only ones that lasted were really invasive, and they were basically two. I don't think they were made of titanium. They may have been made of aluminum, which that's not very good. But anyway, they were long, and they would poke all the way into underneath, right into the meat at the dorsal, and they literally would wrap them around it so that the tag would stay. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that can't be good, because as the fish grows, it's kind of like if you put a wire around a tree, it'll grow right into it until it chokes it off. Well, the same thing with the dorsal spine. Then they started cutting the adipose fins off, and I even have pictures of some giants that I caught with a cut off adipose fin. And that wasn't really a tagging thing. That was so that they made sure that they didn't measure them and weigh them during net studies. Oh boy, I've been involved in many shocking studies where I measured more minnows than I just wanted to puke before I get to number 4,722 of the emerald minnow that weighed 22 grams. I was like, you guys can have that stuff.
Yeah. Let's say, Want to Be Outdoors had a question. How hard would it be to have a registered scale accessible to those who feel they have a record?
Well, it wouldn't be hard, actually. But the thing about it is, no matter what anybody does, no matter how good their registered scale is, if the person that's weighing his own fish is the one responsible for getting it certified, no one will ever trust it. Think about it. I've had people question me on what my estimation was on my giant blue cat that I caught with the kids. They're like, well, I don't think it weighs that, and I don't think it weighs this. I'm like, well, that's fine. You can think it weighs 12 pounds if you want to. This is what I think it weighs, and I'm good with that. If you think it weighed 112 or you think it weighed 135, fine. It doesn't really matter to me, but there's going to be somebody to argue with you no matter what you say your fish weighs, no matter what the length is, no matter what the girth is, no matter what any of it is. There's always going to be a naysayer out there, and usually those are the people, the statistician types that, want to weigh every fish down, which if you're new at it, I could see saying, I cut my PB is 30.25 pounds or 0.222 pounds.
Yeah.
I've weighed enough fish and had enough fish in the boat. I could care. If I'm within 2 pounds or 4 pounds, I'm fine.
Right.
Would an actual catfish magazine for enthusiasts be viable again today? I think it would, Tim Bellini, except for the fact that the internet has actually pretty much wiped out that whole magazine industry, if you really think about it. Because we get to talk with each other that actually do it. And think about this. Most writers are not fishermen. They have fished. They are enthusiasts about it. But when I was writing, I would meet other writers, and they're like, "You've really done that?" They're like, "Oh, they've been to this place and been to that place and fished with a guide, but they never pioneered anything. They didn't really, come up with an equation on how to find big fish in rivers anywhere they swim. They didn't do any studies. They were writers. That's all they were. I just happen to be a cat fisherman who can write somewhat. They're writers that can kind of fish somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not putting them down. It just is what it is.
Right.
Big time. Caught a record channel cat last week, and instead of waiting 2 days for the fisheries department to certify the fish and let it die in the process, he turned it loose. That's what we have to do.
ABT.
Records are cool, but they're not all they're cracked up to be. I know people that have records and they're like, it was cool when it was, but I wish I would have let the fish go. That's what they always tell me.
Yeah.
Good night, Creel. Thanks for coming in, buddy.
to you, Jeremy.
Let's see if we got any other questions.
If nobody has a
I know
question,
at
I've got a
CatCon.
question for Jodi.
Well, I got one more thing to mention about CatCon. Your Epic lights. And I've seen
the
that. I
Epic
know
lights.
Carl's got some, and they glow really good of a night.
Well, yeah, thanks. I've still got some to make for some people, which they should be. I should be able to get them made in the next couple of weeks, I hope. And like I was telling you guys off screen, I mean, usually I'm still at work by now, and you know, it's getting under control a little bit.
We're good. You got a question for me?
I do. So, in your neck of the woods, you're already catching flatheads, of course. Is that when is the earliest you could expect to go out there and target flatheads where you're at on the Tennessee River?
Right now they're hitting. They started about 3 weeks ago, and I've been checking flathead holes for about 2 months. Often, about every week, I go check them, trying to see if anything's hitting. And it warmed up some, got about 54 degrees temperature in the water, and they started biting.
Yeah. And of course, I am very jealous of everybody in the South that's been catching flatheads for a month now, going, look at this. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm going to have to wait. So, Don R., ever thought about going north and exploring the upper Missouri River? You know, I have thought about that. I have a priority list, though. There's a lot of places I haven't been able to explore in my life, and one of them is really that much farther than St. Louis on the Mississippi, and I really kind of have that in my bucket list first. Now, to go up the Missouri, I think would be fantastic because it's really neat. It kind of changes the farther north you get up there, and it becomes a catfish, big northern pike, smallmouth type river instead of what we have down here. So yeah, I mean, I'd be excited about all that. You know, if somebody called me tomorrow and said, "Hey, I'm going to be your benefactor, and I'm just going to let you go fish everywhere," oh my gosh, do I have a list? Oh, do I have a list? Yeah, 2 stands if people want to journey from just catfishing to epic catfishing. What advice do I have for them? Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pay attention to where big fish live. Like I've oftentimes explained it, where in the first decade of my big catfish search, I was expecting big catfish where they don't exist. So that was really when I really figured out that there wasn't a bunch of giant flatheads in the Illinois River. It was kind of devastating to me, but I started to figure out about 5, 6, 7, 8 years into it, and I caught flatheads. But once I learned the equation to be able to target them on rivers like the Rock or rivers like the Kaskaskia or the Mississippi, and then I went to the Illinois and tried to duplicate it, and it just wouldn't happen. There are some 30s and 40s there, but the river used to be, before the dams, used to have the right habitat. Well, it doesn't now, and they're too susceptible to commercial fishing. So, and commercial fishing is heavy on the Illinois. So that's one of the first things you got to do. The second thing you got to do is go, okay, you cannot be satisfied with what you did yesterday. That's the thing. Either I don't know how to say it besides you can't measure yourself or your success based on what other people are doing. You got to put it on yourself. You got to say, I am not accepting, and this is what I do. People can do whatever they want, but I just say to myself, I'm not accepting failure. I'm going to be realistic about it, but I'm not going to accept that, well, the fish just weren't doing it. So I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep trying to, move that Rubik's Cube, follow a consistent big fish equation, I'm going to try to put it in their face, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to go pattern A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And sometimes I'm going to have to look at a situation and say, you know what? I don't really want to fish this way, but I'm going to have to because the fish are leaving me no option. You know, I mean, I don't really like drifting or dragging or any of that stuff, but I'll do it if I have to. You know, be prepared. Yeah, I've caught some giant fish on some pretty light tackle, but I've also lost a lot of giant fish when I was using that same type of light tackle. I would say we still lose big fish, even with our big, you know, I mean, shoot, Shawn lost 3 of them last year, and 2 of them, I believe, were over 100 pounds. So hopefully this year, you'll see us boat some fish that are actually over 100 pounds this year. We just got to, you know, fine tune that a little bit. But as far as the epic catfishing, that is, sometimes you just got to, go and do things that other people aren't willing to do, I guess.
And when you say Shawn was using light tackle, what would you consider? What was he using?
No, it wasn't that. Shawn lost 3 big fish, and we weren't using light tackle for that. It's just the circumstance, you know. One of them was a sideway, you know, it hit outside, and then it went down, and then it raced back up. And while he's trying to catch up to it, because it was in fast current, big fish, once they get hooked, can be really fast. And almost none of the fish that are only 70, 80, 90 pounds ever go upstream that hard. I've had gigantic fish go upstream really hard because it's so easy for him to do it. And it actually got into the anchor rope, which was a long way from the boat by the time he caught up to it. The other time he got 80-pound test leader busted off on a little bitty piece of, there was almost no cover except for one little piece. And that fish ended up getting him into that. And then, and I can't remember the third one, but at least 2 of them were mega giant. And I know the one that busted him off on the thing, I felt the fish. That's all I can say. I know what wavelength of the swimming is. I knew what to expect there. Now, sometimes 50-pound fish will fool you. 60-pound fish, 70-pound fish will fool you. You know where you think. But if I pick up a rod and say this is definitely over 100 pounds, you can take that to the bank. It's over 100 pounds. Because if it tells me, I know. Now, sometimes I've had 100-pound fish where they're about close, and I didn't quite know whether they were 80 or whether they were 90 or whether they were 100. But the ones that show you, you know, with the bite first, pick up the rod and the wavelength and the weight and all that stuff, and you know it's over 100. Because there's nothing else like it. I mean, shoot, Art will know the rest of his life every time he picks up a rod and it's got a fish of that kind of caliber. Danny Stone, there are a few of us in Missouri pushing for slot limits. Give me your best argument to use against the that have fought me on it. Oh boy, that's a hard one, because the one thing that you'll get a lot of people fighting back hard on you is when you propose to take away their perceived rights. And I'm the same way. We're all the same way. You know, something that I love and I enjoy, you know, if I was a guy that liked to go out and put trout lines out and have my 20 friends over and have a party and fry fish, I would feel like these, you know, catch and release guys are coming after me. And I'm going to fight for it because that's what I love. You know, if that's what I did, you know, it'd be the same thing. Like if the trout liner said, hey, you know, you guys, you can't have such big motors on your boats. You can't do this. You can't do that. So Danny, that is a really tough proposition. The one thing that you can say, especially in a state of Missouri like you're talking, is that at least the people that I knew at the time, they were pro-tourism, because Missouri's not really a harvest state, if you get what I mean. You know, so they're at least they're their revenue dynamics actually does hinge on quite a fair amount of tourism. So what a person could say is that a trophy fish, nobody wants to travel from 3 states away for a 30-pound fish.
Right.
They, in back when I used to poll people, years ago, it was a 50-pound fish. People would travel 3 states away at a shot at a 50-pound fish. They'd go to the James, they'd go to the Mississippi, they'd fish with me, they'd fish with other guides. But now that benchmark is so much higher. Now it seems that it's like 70 pounds. At CatCon, I asked you guys in the crowd, I said, what do you think is a really big fish now? 70. That's the nod. Some people said 50, but now it's 70. So that's grown in 20, 25 years, another 20 pounds. So you could say, Danny Stone, that unless you protect the big fish, it's hard to get tourism, especially for trophy catfishermen. And the longer people are in catfish, the more they slant towards a trophy aspect. The majority do. Because, when you first get into it, when you're a kid, you catch the little ones. They're awesome. And I mean, little, they could be giant to us. At one time, I tell everybody, 10-pound channel cat was huge to me at one time. But as you get into it, your desire to catch bigger and bigger fish are there. And I'm not going to a state I'm not going to Kentucky. I'm going to tell you that. I know enough about it. They don't, I'm not going to a state. I'm not going to the Ohio River. Nothing wrong with the Ohio River. I'm not putting anybody down, but everybody that fishes the Ohio, they know it's plundered because they're caught in that chasm, that deal where some states have done regulations and other ones have. So it's sent all the commercial fishing like buzzards to certain sections of the Ohio and the Mississippi River. And, unfortunately, there's pools on the Mississippi near where I fish. They're not worth fishing because they're so hammered by commercial fishing. So if you're going to, I used to take 160 clients a year. And some of them were from in-state, but a lot of them were for out-of-state. Some were from Australia. I actually had people fly in, pick them up at the airport. Fly in from Australia, fly in from Europe, do all this stuff, just to get in the boat and learn from you and having a shot at a 50-pound fish. Now, would they do that for channel cats? Absolutely not. Most of my channel cat clients, even though we were catching, 10 to 15 pound, 20-pound channel cats in fast water, it was a beautiful trip. It was absolutely exciting. But no, I didn't have people coming from 3 states away. 3 states away guys are trophy flathead guys. They were trophy blue cat guys. And they spent money to do it. And if you're going to create revenue as a state, you're not going to do it on table fare size fish. You're going to do it on your big fish. So you got to have something to promote to get people to come to your state, to spend that hotel money, to spend that gas money, to spend that money in the tackle shop, to buying bait, to catching bait, to doing any of that stuff, paying a guide. And it adds up. And I'll tell you, if I added up all the money that my clients spent coming to where I fish, it was far greater than what they paid me. And so, but plus what they paid me, then I paid taxes on that and then all that stuff. So those fish that I caught were worth way more than any pound of fish at a grocery store or at the local fish market. Way more. And I put them back. So everybody's, big on renewable resources. That's the epitome of a renewable resource.
Yep.
It doesn't get any greener than that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Bugman, DNR officers have regions they patrol. How hard would it be to have each certified with scales, and when a call in their region comes in, they go and certify the fish? I agree with you, Bugman. There are things that don't seem difficult to us that seem oh so difficult to other people for some reason. You know, maybe they have a legitimate reason not to do that. I don't know. But I would think if I was in a DNR position that I would make it a priority, because a record is a record. I mean, if Illinois or Missouri or, you know, Florida or Texas or Tennessee gets the new world record, I mean, that's worth quite a bit to that state. Maybe not to the angler. You know, everybody says, oh, if I caught the world record, I'd be a millionaire. Well, no. I know plenty of people that have caught world records and state records, and really, personally, they get some notoriety out of it a little bit, but really not a whole lot. You know, unless, of course, you're a sponsored bass fisherman in a tournament and you catch a new world record. That's going to be worth a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Epic Catfish. Do all the catfish at night come up shallow to prey on bait? The big boy cats. G-style, this is something I've contemplated for years. And I recently did a kind of a video on my catfish obsession, and that was one of the questions that I posed in that. Do they come up shallow and ambush prey fish? Yes, but a lot of times they don't. And see, if you were to just read articles or just talk to people with certain things, or you could come to New Mexico. That's right. That's right, Chris. So, yeah, I mean, my success rates with huge fish rose when I quit trying to figure out where they're going to go shallow, than sticking with their haunts that they inhabit during the day and basically targeting just their movement. So let's just say they're shallow flats on one side of the river. How many acres of shallow flats are there in a river? Tons and tons and tons and tons. So you got to think the law of averages says, how am I going to, in one trip, go contact a giant in 4 foot of water? Well, odds are I'm probably not going to, because I've done it enough that I know that there's just not scads of giant fish in any population, truly giant fish. You know, usually a good population of giant fish is somewhere in the territory of 0.5% to 1.5% of the population. So you're already dealing with a tiny amount. I feel the best way for me to contact them, or anyone to contact them, is to mark them. Go ahead of them. I mean, you could possibly catch them, you know, actually locating your boat downstream of them, because they don't always go upstream. But I think they do about 70-75% of the time. When they move, their head's already into the current, their face is already into the current, and they move this way. So I think my best odds at catching truly giant fish is to mark them, go up ahead of them, set up and ambush these fish, or put it in their face where they live during the day or at night. And I've caught a lot of giant fish at night in the same areas that they haunt in the daytime. And if you pay attention to the guys that fish the Tennessee and they do really well, they're not really throwing up on flats that much. Sometimes you have to, but Jodi doesn't, you know, necessarily go up shallow. Yeah, she'll go up shallow if she has to, but I kind of paid attention enough in her stuff to say, okay, she's still fishing that same, you know, daytime type haunt that they would be in the daytime. But because let's be honest, if giant catfish don't have to go on some sort of bait fish excursion to go try to find one or ambush them, if they're coming to them, they're in there. I mean, that's hog heaven for them. Epic Catfish. What do catfish do when the river floods? What do you look for? Fast current and shallow conditions. Okay. So when the river floods, one thing, you've got a lot more area. All right. It's always a problem. It doesn't matter who you are as an angler. You know, I know lots of anglers, and every one of them will tell you, geez, it's flooded. I hate it. Now, I do have a couple of rules for myself If it's still within the confines of the bank, I think it's generally just as good. But once it spills up and out into the trees, now all of a sudden we've got a problem, because before, when they were fairly confined to the riverbank, I could still locate them. But now you've got heavy high water. Some are still in the same places that they are in normal water. It's just now there's debris coming down. There's a lot more current. There's a lot more everything. It's way harder to contact those same fish. But also, you've got a certain percentage of the population that gets up and they're behind, they're, up in the trees. So, there's 800,000 trees in the water, and which one am I going to target? So I kind of try to limit it to that outside edge. So where the new current that is now up in the trees, I try to stay in that kind of zone from the trees that are from the edge where the water contacts them and kind of pushes. Mm-hmm. And I try to read current and try to notice certain things. There are some go-to spots, and the reason that they're go-to spots is I know what it looks like before it's flooded. So you've got just a trickle of a creek coming in, but it's got a nice, as you're going downstream, it's fairly shallow, and it's got a nice little trench that goes like this. So I like to throw into the trench. There's some sunken ships that aren't normally in that much water during normal water. And then when it floods, they're great. So, but as long as that water is still in the confines of its normal riverbanks, I feel pretty comfortable. I know my odds are going to go down the higher the water gets, and the more debris that's in the water. That's, I wish I had a magic wand for that. I wish I could tell you this is exactly what you need to do, but that's about as close as I can get. Stan, I'd like to thank you as well for putting in all the time and the effort into helping people, from guys that are new at it to guys that have been fishing for years. I mean, it's pretty darn fantastic. I mean, look at, Jodi and Tom and all the people in chat. I think it's a great thing. It got me excited about catfishing again, like I used to be, and I'm not saying I lost a whole lot of excitement for it. It's just, it wasn't, first on my list like it is now. I mean, it's kind of like a new beginning in the last year and a half. Okay. Want to be outdoors. When's the last time you fished the Arkansas River? What techniques would you suggest for said river? Okay, I'll have to tell you a quick story about the Arkansas. I only fished it a couple times, and it was with somebody else, and I don't think I was probably even 25 years old. Now, I do remember the river. I do remember, of course, there's a lot of things I forget, but I don't really forget about, any of the spots I've ever fished, especially if I've ever caught big fish. The one thing about the Arkansas is that it's a traditional what I would call a mid-sized river, in which, of course, there's dams, there's, things, but I was still pretty impressed with the main channel. It is like a small version of the Mississippi. You got shallow water, and you got deep water. You got some bends. You got some slower water. You got some faster water. I try to stick with the current first, cover second, and depth third, honestly. And it doesn't matter if I'm trying to target channel cats, flatheads, or blues. So I want to find the appropriate current. So that'd be pretty darn fast for blues, kind of that mid sauntering for flatheads, and somewhere in between for channel cats. And let me read this one before it disappears. How big do you go on your big baits for a monster? Oh, we'll get to that one here in a minute. Matter of fact, I'll just pull one out of the freezer for you there, Chris. So anyway, the Arkansas River, I would use all the traditional tactics that I talk about and that other guys talk about, because every one of them is going to work on the Arkansas, depending on what you want to do, what pool you're fishing, and where you want to go. So, good sized baits, fishing ledges and drop offs and holes, like Jodi does. Shoot, I mean, almost anything's going to work. But if you want to target big fish, You got to figure out where they live, figure out some pinch points ahead of them, ledger up, throw out, hope for the best. But if a spot's not doing it in 20, 25 minutes, time to move, whether you're marking fish or not. I mean, that's just always been my kind of rule. The deeper the water, the longer I stay. The shallower water, the less time I stay. 10, 15 minutes in shallow water, under 15, 12, under 12 feet. If it's only 2 or 3 feet, I'm only staying 5 minutes, because if I'm not getting bit right away, they ain't there. Okay, so El Gato. Let's I don't know if my wife buried it or not, so we'll see where it is. Uh-oh. Here it is.
Hey, Dink.
I'm going to get this where you guys can see it better.
We've got 63 people in chat now, so we've had quite a few come in. Like to say hello to all of you that we've missed saying hello to. So thanks for watching and coming in.
Boy, she's going to love me for drying this off with the dish towel, but that's about as big a bait as I usually use. And usually I use about half of this. I mean, I have used bigger, but I mean, this is what I would call a donkey bait extraordinaire here. That's special situations. Man, that thing stinks still.
What kind of fish is that, Tim?
Love it. That's actually a South Apaku from the Amazon River Delta. So yeah, that's.
Now you throw it out like that, or do you cut it?
You cut
holes in it.
Depends. If I've got big aggressive fish, and I've got other smaller aggressive fish, like just say I got 40 pounders running amok, but I know there's some big ones in the mix, I'm gonna throw that thing whole. I might take an Asian carp that's like 2 foot and chunk that thing in half. So I got a 12-inch piece that's this big around if I have to. Now, last year we didn't find that situation. We were either on 30, 40, 50s, or we were on 70s, 80s, or 90s. That's what it seemed to be. We didn't have a huge population of fish. We did at one time, and then all of a sudden a lot of them scooted downstream out of our range, but we were left with smaller pods of like-sized fish. But if I get that where the population is kind of bigger, and you've got 30s, 40s, and 50s mixed with 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s, that's when I whip this type of baits out, because I don't want to spend time with a 50 that takes 20 minutes to reel in when there's bigger fish in the mix. So even though I've caught plenty of 40s and 50s with this size bait, but it will reduce the amount of fishing time if that's so necessary. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Tim, why would you ever want to eliminate 30, 40, and 50? Those are great fish, and I agree. But if I'm on like a monster hunt and there's 1 or 2 giant fish that I've marked amongst 15 or 20, yeah, I'm going to try to eliminate those other ones to try to get to that big fish. Except for the fact that I'm still going to try to throw it on that blue's face. Now, that's fine if they're located, but a lot of times when you mark blues, they're actually moving. So not all the time. There's sometimes, and you only know by evidence. So you mark one fish over here, and you set up. You've taken 5 minutes to anchor. You got your baits. You got 10 minutes, and then you throw it exactly to that spot you need to, and he bites within 4 or 5 minutes. That fish didn't go anywhere. He was still sitting there. So that's what I mean about paying attention as you're fishing, listening to those fish to see what you need to do. Now, if they're constantly moving, there's only one thing to do in my mind, and that is to go and find a pinch point or a final destination. So that means maybe you got a big basin area and there's a front lip, you know, kind of coming up front lip, kind of like what Tom was describing at his thing, you know, like maybe it's a channel, but maybe it's just a pothole. I don't know. But, you know, if you find that leading edge or that leading piece of cover or that, you know, the where the current comes in and hits that sunken ship, it doesn't really matter. It's just finding that right zone that takes a bigger swath of population and narrows them down. It's almost like deer hunting. I'm not a deer hunter, but I hear people talking about it all the time.
I
What
call it
size?
choke.
What's that?
I was going to ask, what size was that hook that you had in that bait?
16-aught and a 12. So I got a tail 12 and a 16-aught right through the eye socket coming out the mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there's different ways of hooking stuff. Like I would probably honestly leave the 12 off most of the time, because all that 12 is going to do is hook up with I actually did this one for instructive purposes, but all that 12 is going to do is hook up with more 30 and 40 pound fish, maybe even 20s, because those 20s or 30s or 40s, they'll just grab the back end of the tail and put it, stuff it as far in their mouth as they can and try to swim away with it. So, you know, I don't even like that. But I am looking for some good 20s that aren't so thick. That's the one thing I don't like about the saltwater series. They're too darn thick. If I could get a nice 16 to 20-aught modified circle hook that doesn't have, I mean, this thing's built for great whites. I mean, catfish aren't, you know, trying to bite these things in half or, you know, break them. You know, I just need something that is, you know, a decent wire size with the right design, and I'd be, you know, in tall cotton.
Right. Now I had a question. What classifies a fish as a hippopotamus?
Anything over 5 foot.
All right. Good.
And you know, girth, because, you know, when and usually the when I see a hippopotamus, and I don't usually call them hippopotamuses unless they're moving, if they're underneath the boat and you see them and the mark on it is that thick and it's this long on your fish finder, and you know it's over 5 foot because you've caught fish over 5 foot, you go, oh, there's a hippopotamus, because it reminds me of those shows on National Geographic when they're running along the bottom of the river.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it reminds me of. So I'm like, man, you know, there we go. So we're going to be pulling out some new names this year. We've got some wildebeest action going. We've got some,
nice.
you know, other things. You know, as some of you guys know, I'm a dinosaur fan, so we'll be calling them various dinosaur names at times, and we'll see.
Excellent.
It's going to be kind of interesting. But we are going to go to some areas, and I know I've been talking about this for a while, but we're going to go to some areas not too many people fish because they're just damn scary. And like I said before, we're just going to try to catch some monster fish and try to not die. Bobcat. Going to be honest and tell the truth. Most states consider catfish of any kind trash fish or simply something to be commercially harvested. They do not get the same respect that bass do. You're absolutely right, Bobcat. And unfortunately, we still live in a world where, you know, some people understand it, but most don't. Honestly, you know, my wife works at the bank, and I go in there, and every once in a while there'll be somebody that follows me on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and like, hey, I saw your last show and blah blah blah, and somebody next to him will be like, huh, what do you mean? And you end up showing them a little 20-second video or a 1-minute video, or the first thing comes out of their mouth, did you eat it? We're like,
I know.
come on,
Every time.
21st century here, every time. What do you do with them? They ain't any good to eat, are they? Well, probably not. But I sure do love catching them.
Yep.
I know. And you can see it all over TikTok that the most viewed things are like the dumbest and most like things that get like 1 million views are like if somebody tripped and fell in a boat and it started on fire and a catfish came up and ate their face off. That's going to get 5 million views. But something really cool and thoughtful and whatever, it's got a following, but not really anything like that. Yeah.
Now you're also traveling with friends you've been on YouTube, right? Fishing with them this year? You're going to fish with people you met on YouTube,
be able to
right?
invite people to come fish with me if that's available. I've got plenty of people that always want to go, but I would like to get some YouTube guys out on the boat. YouTube people. Mike's fishing home. I've invited him to go. If we go fish his power plant lake, maybe we'll be able to take him to the Mississippi. There's other people I'd like to take, but there's also people. Do you guys remember seeing PJ on one of my lives? The goofy kid lifting up his shirt, doing all this. He's hilarious. Shawn couldn't go. Shawn was dealing with some stuff, and I said, PJ, let's go. And I mean, he's a great kid. I'd like to have him back. Mark Knott, that's Mark Knott's brother. Matter of fact.
Okay.
I think I do remember that episode.
What's that?
So I think I do remember that episode now that you say that. There's Mark's brother.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to forget when a dude's he's quite the savage himself. So I mean, I'd like to take Aaron out again, which is Aaron Gibbons, a longtime friend of mine. He caught an 80-pounder with me last time. I put that on YouTube. He gets excited, but wow, there's not many people to get that excited. I had to cut a whole lot of it out because it just went on and on and on. And he's like, don't make me look dumb. I'm like, you're not gonna look dumb. You just look excited. You're good. So yeah.
I got another question. How did you meet Shawn, and how did you become fishing buddies?
Oh boy,
The dynamic duo.
I lived in town at my parents' house on East Main, and he lived in the house across the street. But he was, I think he's 5 years younger than me. So when I was 16, he was like 11. So we didn't have much to do with each other. I mean, I'd see him wave, whatever. I knew of him. My brother's like 6 years younger than me. And they kind of pseudo played football in the same kind of era. I was already out of school and all that. But then he came to work for a company. I was the production manager at a local furniture company, like I was talking about before. And he came to work there. We also, it's kind of interesting, his circle of friends and my circle of friends were kind of linked. So his best friend's uncle was a few years younger than me in school, and it just so happened that I was ready to move out of my house. He was ready to move out of his parents' house, and we actually rented a place, and he ended up visiting, and his and we all played football and all that stuff for the same town, and so it's immediate, but Shawn's an awesome kid. He worked with me at Green Gables a couple times, and we sprayed furniture. We built furniture during the day, and then we sprayed second shift. And and then we kind of all rented a house out in the country. It was like a 5-bedroom country house. And you can imagine that there was some beers drank back in those days. We were in our 20s, all that. I think there was maybe a 50 to 100 person party. And let me tell you how long ago this was. Mike Tyson was the boxing world champion at the time. So we would rent the pay-per-view things and watch that. And oh my God.
Yep.
100,000 stories. And so the fishing came because, of course, I was a fisherman. And, I had a tank set up in the garage with catfish in it, with bait fish in it, with all this stuff. And, you know, I was constantly going fishing and all that. And Shawn, he stuck. There's been a lot of people that go, and there's some people that like it for a while, and then they kind of fall out of it. Shawn's he's a catfish savage like the rest of us. He's in it, you know. He could pretty much care less about anything else. He'll go sit on a bank for flatheads and, you know, hope to catch 2, you know, and fish 8 hours to do it, you know. And so I kind of reconnected with Shawn, and I said, Shawn, I gotta show you this stuff, what I'm doing, what I've been doing. And he's like, really? Yeah. I'm like, so the first time I took him flathead fishing, I took him and set him on there's a sunken barge called Bubba Fish, and we set up, and he had a 35-pound fish in like the first 12 minutes, and he was sold after. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, we'll wait 6 months for a fish like this. I'm like, well, that's what you got to do. You got to go target this and target that and all that stuff. And then he talked me into doing YouTube, because he's like, dude, he goes, what you do is unheard of amazing. Now, I'm not saying there's nobody that does what I do or is, you know, I'm not saying I'm the best catfisherman in the world either, but I can kind of describe things to help people and, you know, show people that this can be done. And he's like, dude, you got to do it. And I'm like, I kind of hem-hawed for probably 6 months. And finally, I'm, you know what? And when COVID hit, I started actually watching YouTube, because I tried to find some YouTube and it really wasn't working. I'd like do search for catfish, and I'd get like the dumb stuff from Thailand, you know, like the clickbait stuff where, you know, on the thumbnail, it's like this giant catfish, and that's all they were promoting to me. And, you know, I did see Chris Flores, and I did see Steve Douglas, but I didn't see, you know, everybody else was kind of invisible to me. So Shawn, of course, was already into the catfish community a little bit. And so he started sending me links, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Because all I saw was like Tide Pig Patrol and Stash Bag and all that stuff. They were like annoying to me. And I'm like, cheapers, I got to find somebody that's a realistic person I can watch. And Shawn's like, yeah, they're all over the place. He's like, grr. He sent it to me. I'm like, oh, this is cool. You know, and then I got to meet more and more people. And then I jumped in a chat one time, and I was like, yeah, this is really cool. So then I decided, I'm going to do some filming, you know. And, you know, the first weekend that I had my GoPros was Catfish Brothers, where my 2 sons and I put in. We went above the dam. We located the fish. We paid attention to the fish finder. We throw out and we catch 2 50-pound fish or thereabout. Then that same day we locked through, we went up, and our first anchor up there, then we catch the 130. That was my first day of filming for YouTube.
Wow.
Even though I didn't put them out first, because I didn't know how to edit worth the crap. So I started off with I think Big Cats on Fire, and then Dangerous Waters. You know, it was Shawn and I, you know, we're doing that, and we caught some big fish, but it wasn't anything super huge or monumental. But I'm still learning how to edit, and I wish I knew how to edit better, because I would have put out all those videos better than they are now. And I hate to like redo them or pull them down and redo. I'd love to redo them, you know, but I didn't know how to deal with wind noise, so I just threw in loud music. I didn't have great music to begin with. It was just kind of dumb and cheesy. And, you know.
No, they were great videos.
Okay, all right. But when I look at it now, I'm like, oh, man, I could do so much better now. You know, and so I even try not to watch them, because I've got a bunch of regret. I'm like, oh, I would have done this. I would have left out this, and I would have put this in there. And, oh, yeah. But that just makes it better for when we catch our next monsters this season.
Yeah. But, you know, when you put those out, those is actually better produced videos than what most people was doing at the time.
Oh, well,
everybody's picked up their game right now, but back then, those videos was top of the line, I think.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm very picky up in my head, you know, so I've got a certain, you know, thing that, you know, I was doing the best I could at the time, and I was pretty proud of it at the time. But
Yeah.
now that I know, now I know where to get decent music instead of just going, like to one place. I can go to other places and get something and not have it so loud. And I know how to deal with wind noise now. And I Flint Hill just actually sent me some sound devices so that when we're doing lives, if I'm away from the camera, you can actually hear it. So there'll be a separate sound, because right now, one of the things that costs me so much time is that I've got a chest camera, Shawn doesn't, and we've got another camera on the boat. Well, when I talk, it's really loud, and when Shawn talks, it's really soft. So I always have to pump his volume up and mine down to get that good sync. And that takes a lot of time if you've got 20 hours of stuff you got to go through. A 10-hour trip is 20 hours worth of video, and you got to do that, and then you got to bump everything up and bump everything down on a terrible, crappy computer. So trying to get that fixed.
We just hit the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I'm actually quite awake. I should probably be going to sleep, but I can wait up another half an hour or so if you guys can stomach it.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
I have a question here that somebody asked of me. Have I drilled holes in my boat yet for my catfish rack? The answer to that is no. My boat is still pristine, sitting in the driveway. And I got to say, even if I were to put racks on it, I couldn't tournament fish out of it because I don't have a live well anywhere big enough. It's a bass boat, and it's not made for trophy-sized catfish. So I'm going to keep it in the condition it's in. So if I sell it, then I can get my money back for it and buy something different.
Hey, some old man outdoors, Sunfish Assassin. How you doing? But since you're going to stay a while longer, did you see this picture? Is some of the first ones I caught this year? My twins?
I did see that picture. That's awesome.
That's a great picture. Yep.
That is awesome.
I'm proud of those. Even though there's only 26 and 27 pounds, it's my favorites for the year.
I do not turn my nose up at smaller flatheads either, because a flathead is a flathead is a flathead. Flathead's just he's not huge. He's still a little monster. So, because they're badass, mean as anything else. Yeah. How about taking a crappy old grumpy former Marine, Epic? You can bring a guitar. You know what, James? Anytime you want to go, just get on over here. Better contact me first, because I want to make sure I have time to go. But yeah.
James Alba, he did come in chat. We've got quite a few. We still got 50 watching.
Got the hardcores.
Yeah. Killer Bee Outdoors. David Smith, Take Down Catfishing, which is Kenneth. Dominique Hollis. Let's see. Catfishing with Cause, she's in here. Whiskers and Stripes. Annette Morgan, Don R., Two Stands, El Gato, J. Fox Hunter, how are you? We've got Michelle in here, of course. Sunfish Assassin, G Style Fishing, Jacob Hedging. I think that's how you say that name. And I think that's all I can see. Avid's in here. Dink over Stink. Bobcat was in here earlier. Tim Molina's in here. Catfish Cameron. So we've had a lot of the different crowds come in, from the beginning. And please, all of you all, if you haven't subscribed to Tim and Shawn, their links are at the bottom. Subscribe to them, and You definitely don't want to miss their lives this summer because it's a great show.
Say, Tim, you're roughly about my age. Have you ever heard of the name E.F. Hutton?
Oh yeah.
You know, when I was a kid in Boston, it was a financial firm, and they had a commercial that said, "When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen." And I've adopted that to you.
Oh,
You know,
boy.
when Epic Catfish speaks, people, you can bring a chat to a stop.
Well, maybe some of them are sick of hearing me talk. I don't know. Maybe they're like,
I
oh,
don't
maybe
know.
they're rolling their eyes. Who knows?
I don't think that's it.
You know, sometimes I'll like, oh, geez, we got to put up with this guy again. Because, you know, I do get excited on, you know, especially in things like this. And I have a hard time, you know, waiting my turn to talk because I'm like the kid. I'm like the 10-year-old. Just can't wait to tell you what he did today. You know, and you know, the adults are having the conversation and he's pulling up. I mean, I feel like I'm pulling everybody's shirt strings, you know, but yeah, I mean, we're all excited about catfishing.
Right.
This kind of goes with, you know, what Want to Be Outdoors just said right up here on the screen. One of probably the greatest things a guy could do for people who don't understand fishing is show your excitement about it. Say, man, I just love these giant fish, you know, the trophy fish, you know, not the, you know, the pond fish or the whatever, because if you're trying to get something going as far as a trophy fishery, you got to show people how important it is to you and how important it is to other people. I mean, that's one of the greatest things you can do. You can say, you know what, I've fished all my life, but there's nothing like, you know, a 50-pound fish or a 40-pound fish or, you know, whatever. We like to see these fish survive, you know, because there is a lot of pressure on them. And, you know, we could, you know, absolutely help the normal person that doesn't have a clue about fishing, you know, just in the excitement, you know, that you're thinking about, you're talking about, and show them some pictures. You know, who cares? My wife rolls her eyes every time. We might be somewhere and shoot, we be at a place and you know, somebody starts talking to me and we start talking about catfish, and pretty soon he's pulling out his catfish pictures and I got mine out, you know, and pretty soon I'm hijacking the television to play your catfish videos up on the, you know, up on the big screen TV, and boy, and you know, you'd be surprised how many people that don't fish are just amazed. They're like,
Yeah.
just never take their eyes off of it. And these aren't even people I'm talking to. So, you know, instead of the old baseball game up there, we got Epic Catfish, we got Shawn, we got other people, El Gato, and I'll play some YouTube stuff. And, you know, it's pretty amazing.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I go to, I'm finishing up some physical therapy on my shoulder. And
I was just at physical therapy for my shoulder today.
I go Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I'm just about done with what they've given me authorization for. But I made the mistake. I told the woman that does it, you know, on the Fridays, you know, while I'm going fishing, and you know, we'll be catching some big fish. And I made the mistake. I showed her the picture of the 56-pounder that I caught.
Oh yeah.
And then she was typing her notes, and she said, "How big was that catfish again?" I'm like, "Shoot." She's putting in my medical record that I'm hefting 55-pound, 56-pound fish on the shoulder she's trying to repair.
There you go. There you go. Well, my physical therapist, when I got there, his name's Scott, and he takes one look at me. He goes, "Aren't you the catfish guy?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess so." You know, and he's like, "You know, somebody sent me one of your videos because I know you from somewhere." I'm like, "Well, yeah." And so we've been talking about catfishing ever since. And, you know, there might be 20 people in this whole thing, you know, getting worked on. He's always with me every single time. So as I'm doing my presses and the rubber band stretch and all that stuff, he's questioning me about catfishing. So it makes that that whole thing go by pretty quick.
Yeah.
Awesome, Dan. Nothing better than out fishing with Dad.
Yep. Good luck, Dan.
And
Appreciate you coming in.
I'm sure your dad appreciates it too. because yeah, there's nothing better than that.
This might be the highest compliment somebody could pay. Uncle Jeep could pay you. He doesn't troll when you're on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I sincerely enjoyed Uncle Jeep at CatCon. He's
funny,
he's
wasn't he?
quite a
Yeah.
character, yeah. Quite a character. That's pretty awesome.
And he had good donuts too.
Well, and I believe that I have the right version of this story, and I hope Mike Murillo's in here right now, because I literally saw Uncle Jeep carrying a bunch of burritos or tacos, I think it was. Yeah. And I think I watched Michael Murillo eat tacos for like a solid hour. I don't think he ever left that little 2-foot square right by that taco thing. And man, he put some tacos away.
Yeah, he did. Awesome. I was there. That might have been me you saw, but I was right there with him.
I'm pretty certain I saw at least 8 or 9 of them go down old Michael Murillo's throat right there. I was like, woo.
Let's see. I think Stan has something here for you.
If you're on this catfish journey, we're all on different stages, and we all have different size fish in our water. So be happy of the fish you're catching, because you'll be catching bigger and bigger as time goes by. You know, that's absolutely true, Stan. You know, yeah, we talk about big fish because that's what really trips our trigger. But, you know, don't anybody at home that may be new to this stuff say, well, you know, he doesn't appreciate this. Oh, yeah. In the journey, you know, way back, 5-10 pound channel cats were awesome. I mean, they still are. I mean, I can still, you know, go and, you know, but I have trouble fishing for smaller fish if I think there's a good shot at monsters somewhere. You know, if it's close to home, and we'll do another scary river trip, you know, where, you know, the best we can hope for is 20 pounds, and it's still fun. It's beautiful. It's relaxing. It's kind of back to the roots. But you give me the choice. If I got 100-pound fish max or 20-pound fish, I'm going to take the 100-pounder every time. Dominic Hollis, I have $1 million question. Epic, have you ever been spooled? Dominic, there's been several times when I've almost been spooled. And but one thing that was creating that was the fact that I was using Garcia 6500s in waters that I shouldn't have been using it. 20-pound test, larger baits, hooked into some really big fish, and nearly got spooled. Now we had to up anchor and chase them and do all that stuff because the current was too fast, the rods were too light, the line was too light, and that little Garcia 6500 with a 3-ounce sinker, I can darn near spool one just casting it, you know, with a decently long rod. Right. So I mean, there was no surprise there. But have I almost been spooled with these giant? Yes, a couple of times where I thought, I don't have much line left on this, and I'm telling you, they hold a lot of line. And unfortunately for YouTube, I can't put an entire fight on because it gets too tedious. Nobody really wants to watch. I mean, some guys would like to watch a 45-minute fight. There's no doubt, and I would love to put it on. But holy crap! By the time you intro it, you deal with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Now, 45-minute fight, and you know, and the fish is 70 pounds. It's kind of anticlimactic. But at in certain areas, a 70-pounder is going to want to spool you. In other areas, a 50-pounder might want to spool you, depending on what you're using for tackle. Now, I've got some rigs that I use pretty consistently in blue cat water that I'm not really going to get spooled. You know, one. I don't know if I have it in here or not. I don't think I do. No, I don't. I put one of my new reels, and man, that thing holds a ton of line. It's like a big coffee can. But as far as being spooled all the way down to the end and then, line ripped off, no.
What type of reels are they that you're using now?
Well, I'm using a smattering, but the ones that I have been using for probably the last 25 years are the Arsenals, and they're big. They were made by Shakespeare, but they were made when actually Shakespeare made good stuff.
Mhm.
And I had some contenders before that, which are just about like that, but they didn't hold up as well. And
Mhm.
these things have held up well to 2 to 3 pounds of weight and bait thrown a lot. They've held up to giant. I mean, I've caught fish over 70 or 80 pounds on every single one of them. I got like 8 of them.
Huh.
But now they're finally starting to wear out because I'm the world's worst, absolute world's worst at maintenance. I mean, I have so little time. I just get it out of the box, put it in, throw the line on it, and fish. And you know, I don't think I've ever on any of those arsenals ever taken them apart, ever lubed them, ever done any. I have lubed the pawls before, but that's about it.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, so I'm probably the world's worst to talk about gear. You know, I've got friends that's all they love their gear. They're out taking pictures of it and they're polishing it and they're washing it and they're lubing it and they're taking it apart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for that shit.
Yeah, I've done that with my bass gear, but I haven't done it so much with my abus for the catfishing.
Yeah. And, you know, it all depends on what situation you're throwing your stuff in, you know, and how you take care of it. I don't think I've washed a rod for 10 years. There's some of my rods got so many scales and slime buildup on the cork handles that it's like a whole new finish. You can't even tell it's cork.
Yeah.
You know what? I am a weird character. There's no doubt, because I've always enjoyed stuff that's kind of more exciting. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that drums up something. If it's boring, I don't want it. I don't like boring. I don't like to be bored. I don't like to, you know, it's maybe some people call that ADD or whatever. I'll dream up something. I used to call my friends and say, hey, I got this idea, and maybe it's the best thing that I ever did or the dumbest thing I ever did, but I'm going to do it. Are you in? And every single time they're like, we're in, let's do it. So I'm like, all right. You know, and most of the time it worked out, and sometimes it didn't. I mean, we went on adventure trips, and it was the most miserable bite you'd ever. I went to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, because I talked to a guy that said he knew where giant blues were. And as soon as we got down there, everybody at the boat ramp says, yep, should have been here yesterday. We got down there below that dam, and they were giant. They were drum. But, I mean, every cast, no matter what you threw, giant drum everywhere. And, I think we caught maybe, I think we might have caught 10 catfish in 2 days, because we only had 2 days, because it took a day and a half to even drive there. And yeah, it was pretty miserable. So, you know, I learned my lesson on a few things. Do a lot more research and just listen to one guy that tells you it's awesome. I've went to pools on the Mississippi River when I didn't understand the right pools to fish and the right ones to not fish. You know, so I spent a considerable amount of time on some of those giant lake pools where it's a mile wide, it's slow and deep water, bites are few and far between. There's big fish there, but there's really no way to pinpoint them. So I kind of stay away from those pools. Now, if I lived on a pool like that, I would figure it out. But that whole equation takes a little bit longer to figure it out. You may go there and find the right spots fairly early, but they're very subtle, so it's going to take more time. So if I'm going to go do, you know, an adventure trip that takes me 10 hours to get there, I need something that's a little bit more epic. So yeah, I do kind of get up in the morning and say, yeah, it's time to be epic, because I just don't like the normalcy, because the normalcy is boring me, I guess. I mean, that might seem kind of, I don't know, conceited to say, but yeah, I mean, whether it's you know, furniture, or whether it's art, or whether it's chickens, or I don't know. I do push a lot of stuff to the extreme point, I guess.
Hey, I had a question, a little bit off what we've been talking about, but I think I remember you saying in one of your lives the bigger fish don't eat every day.
That's right.
And because that's what we've kind of figured out. Like, well, if we have a a really good bite one night, if we go the next night, say, hey, we're really on them, the bite is gone.
Yeah. Yep. And I know this from a myriad of experiences, not just having them in tanks, but being on a pot of fish day after day, fishing in the right areas, especially flatheads. Flatheads don't have to eat probably. I'll bet flatheads eat half as much as blues do, believe it or not. Now, if you're in a situation where flatheads are grouped up and they're, really, really feeding, yeah, they may eat every day. But once you hit that summer period where they're more, based on keeping other fish away, really that a lot of times the only shot you have is just to piss them off enough with a live bait to where they'll hit that live bait. And that they're not interested in eating, because if you wait too long, they move to 2 feet and spit it, or they just hit half of it and spit it out and all that. Flatheads are ornery creatures. So, they're, and it depends on what kind of system you're targeting them in. And they do act a little bit different, not because they've learned different. It's because of the conditions are different. They're pre-programmed to act a certain way. And so, small rivers are different than medium-sized rivers in targeting them, and big rivers are different again. So, there's a lot of myths to flatheads, that flatheads mostly eat cut bait. Well, they don't mostly eat cut bait, actually. It's just the fact that if you can present cut bait to them in a more of a competitive situation, they're more apt to eat a cut bait than a live bait. But when they're up in their normal habitat, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 foot of water on wood, blah, 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 they're more apt to eat live bait. And, and they're really controlled by the water temperature, the time of year, and the current. And their attitude, it's a roller coaster. And that's why most tournament guys, they won't target any sort of flatheads at all. They'll catch them on accident, but they're not going to target them. Whiskers and Stripes, I promise I'll pay the fine as soon as you hit 1,000, Tom. But has Tim ever done any sturgeon fishing? I did some sturgeon fishing one time, and it's actually up on my YouTube channel. No one watched it. It has like 700 views, and it's been on there for like 2 years. No one likes the sturgeon. It's a pretty cool sturgeon video, believe it or not. But, catfish guys, they're not going to watch the sturgeon thing. But yeah, I fished with Hook Catfish. He invited me to go up north into Wisconsin. And I just kind of on a whim just drove my happy ass up there, and we got in and we caught some awesome sturgeon. And they are beasts. Trust me on that. I mean, I even compared, as I'm fishing, as I'm fighting these sturgeon, I'm actually talking about it, comparing them to catfish. And that's kind of interesting too.
I'd like to say hello to Jeremy Montego. He stepped in. And Whiskers and Stripes, I did see your comment about me taking a nap. No, I lost service. I was not taking a nap. And I got a question about the flatheads. Now you cast off a lot, right? When you're fishing, you suspend, drop on top of the fish.
Mostly cast. I do throw kind of an insurance, but it depends on the situation I'm in. I will not suspend if I'm targeting general cover, if I know the fish aren't moving. If I know they're moving and out aggressive, and I've been catching some out away from the cover, sure, I'll put some straight down rods down. But I'm not going to suspend a bait like Justin does. I'm usually, because we have a lot more current than what he's dealing with. So, if I was to suspend one straight down underneath the boat in a lot of these places, even though I'm targeting flathead style current, my boat oftentimes is in faster current than that. So right underneath me, it's still too fast. I would have to use a giant donkey weight like this big. And we all know that flatheads and donkey weights do not go together. They just don't. You can catch them on, big weights, but a lot of times as soon as that flathead feels that weight pick up off the bottom and it weighs, 14 ounces a pound, and he, does whatever and it drops, he'll just spit that bait. And so, the blues are not bashful. They're not, they're more brutish. Flatheads can be brutish, but most time they're not. I'd say in my experience where I fish, about 10-15% of the time, they're just honking it down. They'll hit, and they'll hit with a vengeance, and they'll do all this stuff. But a lot of times they're pretty dainty creatures, believe it or not. They could be giant and eaten like, I don't even know what to compare it to. You know how when a 5-pound blue hits your bait and he's just wiggling out there, you know what I mean? Just that dumb little wiggle. I've had 50-pound flatheads do that stupid wiggle. Now, it's not that same wavelength because you can always tell. That's just a fish that's suspended up. He's got your sinker up, and he just don't have enough, doesn't have enough weight to do it. But it's still so gentle like that. But if he'll turn and go, you know exactly what it is. But there's been times when I pick up a rod, I knew that there was a hit. It didn't show much. You pick up a rod and you feel it. It's just barely wiggling, but it's not lightweight. It's still solid. It's almost like you're caught on a underwater branch. You know what I mean? You pull, it pulls back a little bit. You end up setting the hook, and it's freaking 70 pounds. And you say, okay, what was that about? Usually those are not, those are usually not males. They're usually big females. And that's the other thing that I've because I've fished for flatheads so extensively, I kind of know where I'm going to catch the females based on the male location. So, you get the aggressive fish, the heart, you got the female just sort of hangs back a little bit. Sometimes the female's like on a, let's just say you go in, it's 6-7 foot, and all of a sudden it drops into a decent hole to 12, and then it kind of comes back up. Well, where it comes back up, I catch most of my bigger females kind of up positioned. Like it's really hard to explain without a diagram, which I had my whiteboard out. But generally, I can find those males up on the front, on the aggressive position, and then the females are just sort of hanging back. And usually the females are giants. I mean, they're thick. They're giants. They don't have a scar mark on them until, just the height of the spawn. Then they get scar marks, in their nether regions because the flatheads are biting at it. But, I mean, they're just not fighters. But, man, some of the females I've caught are just hippopotamuses.
So David Smith wants to know if you can tell the story of the Volkswagen fish.
I think what he's referencing is the short that I put out on YouTube where Shawn was swimming in the water and there's a sunken barge just up and you can see that. And Shawn comes up, and if you know Shawn, like I know Shawn, you guys do, he's kind of a jokester. He's kind of making fun of the Volkswagen story. So he comes up and he says, I saw an eye over here and an eye over here. It had to be the size of a Volkswagen. So he was kind of poking fun at the old urban legend. And I think on TikTok, a lot of people thought he was serious. They're like, oh, no, that can't be, blah, blah, blah. I mean, so there was a lot of comments. And I think that thing's got like, I don't know if it's got 200,000 views or what. But, I mean, every time I look at somebody's commenting or liking that post, it's pretty cool. But as far as the Volkswagen fish goes, I could see how divers, if they were to come in contact with some of the fish, and I can't, other people have caught big fish, but I'm just talking about my experience. Catfish Duo, they catch giant fish all the time. I don't know where they fish, but holy crap, looks like every 5 minutes they're reeling in a freaking 80-pound flathead and a 100-pound blue. But anyways, I could see how a diver that has to go down and service a dam, if he was to come in contact with some of the fish that I've caught and you can't see them, and you put your hand out and that fish they're flat. I mean, they're not even round. Like some of these fish are so tall this way they're just flat. And the one I can talk about is the one that y'all saw on the YouTube thing. I mean, that thing was tall and just a beast. And if anybody in chat or is on here has actually felt one of those fish that was rested, when they're rested, they're a whole different creature. After a fight, after a rod and reel fight, they're pretty placid. But let those things rest for a while, like a day, and then go try to lip them. Try to lip one out of my 1,000-gallon tank out there. I've done it many times. It sucks. They are so powerful, so strong, so rigid. I could see a diver dealing with one of those and go, my gosh, that thing's big as a Volkswagen. Now, do I think fish as big as a Volkswagen actually exist? I don't, because they would have been caught. There would have been a dead one float up. Something would have happened. And they don't, there's, although we would like to think so, you would think a fish goes somewhere. And this is what the urban legend's about. The urban legend's about a fish that is so big, it just stays in one spot all year round, doesn't do anything. They're still fish. They still have the urge to spawn. They still have the urge to move. They still have the urge to whatever. So, there's not going to be a catfish that is just so big. It's just laying down there with moss all over its back. And, it's like the size of an actual hippopotamus. It's just not going to be that. Now, would I be surprised if there's a fish of mega proportions, 150 to even possibly 200? No, I wouldn't be surprised. I actually believe the report from I think it was the Chicago Field Museum, where they sent a couple of guys. They went to a fish market and found a 300 and a 300. No, it was a 315 and a 330 pound catfish. Now, they never specified whether it was a blue or a flathead, but I believe it was probably a blue, especially the location. I think it was right around Memphis, Tennessee. They put it on a boxcar, of course. The boxcar broke down. The train broke down. The ice melted, and they went to waste. So that's why we don't have any. But we do have the writings. We do have the logs and what they purchased them for and all that stuff. So I believe they existed at one time. Now, that was before dams, and we know that as soon as you start to minimize the habitat of any creature, you all of a sudden take the megafauna equation and you start shrinking them down. And I believe that's what's happened. I believe that there has been habitat reduction, which is partly responsible for us not seeing 300 and 330 pound blues. I think sullying the gene pool, because we've always been, as humans for hundreds of years, eat the big ones, let the little ones go. And it's actually backwards.
Right.
So, I mean, without dams, free-flowing rivers, we know harbor big fish. They just do throughout the world. And as soon as they put dams in, it just kind of, it's hard on the biggest of the species.
Now, do you have any thoughts on where the next world record will be caught?
Yeah, I do believe it'll probably be another lake situation, because one thing, I've caught many fish that would beat the world record in length, but not girth. And girth is actually one of the more important measurements in breaking the world record, if you think about it. So if you have a 47-inch girth in a river like you would a lake, see lake fish oftentimes are shorter than like the fish that I catch on the Mississippi of 55, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65 inches. But their girth is only 44, not 48. So at one time, I most likely caught several world records, but of course, like we were talking earlier, they wouldn't come out. I wanted to release them, blah, blah, blah. Not that important. But it's probably going to be a lake fish, especially a lake that has what I call new lake syndrome, is where They were recently stocked within the last 20 years. They have explosive growth early on. They don't hit sexual maturity because the population is very wide open. And then all of a sudden, you've got, in short order, you've got a shot at having really gigantic fish, because I don't think the gene pool is that the genetics is done. I just think that it's not really a dominant trait to be 300 pounds. I think it's a dominant trait to kind of, get to sexual maturity, slow it way down, and then survive as a species. But there's latent genes that could happen at any point.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be caught on the James River. Just saying. Well, hey, it can be caught in any number of places. Now, the James River is kind of like a river lake situation. So is the Potomac. They're rivers, but they have gentle current. The Tennessee has giant fish, and that's one of the reasons. The slower current. Now, I'm not saying that the Mississippi doesn't have giant fish, because it certainly does. But if you look at the silhouette of a fish from all of those systems, they're all just a little bit different, and that's how much do they have to, how much energy are they expending per calories. And lake fish, if they have an abundant bait source and enough room and enough space and a recent amount of time that they've been in there, you could have some super huge fish. But I think, honestly, it could come from probably one of 10 places. It could come from, and we'll start with rivers first. It could come from the James. They've been in there long enough. Maybe not quite, to get a super, super huge fish. And we've seen the James River curve kind of go up and kind of start to slope down again. I don't see the overly obese fish like I used to. 20 years ago, you'd see like a 42-inch fish with this extremely obese, profile. And they were, 60, 70, 80 pounds at 42 to 45 inches, 46 inches, anytime you got a fish under 4 foot that weighs 70 pounds, that's extremely obese. So, and not obese as being fat, just as being massive, just a large football. And the blues in their body style, the hydrodynamic body style, which is more closely, you could call it like a dolphin or a shark body style, as opposed to a flathead or opposed to a channel cat, because of their current orientation. They do that more like that beluga whale thing. And,
right.
The more you feed them and the less they have to work at it, they may not be as tough or as strong as those leaner fish you see in like fast water rivers, but they're still impressive. They are roly-poly giants, that's for sure. Now, I noticed that Art's 92 was not overly rotund, though, either.
No, it wasn't.
It was a long fish. How long was that fish?
56, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said it was 36, but he admits after the fact that he didn't have it in the widest spot, so he was off by a couple of inches on the girth, he believes.
Oh, he was if he measured that at 36, I saw the picture.
Yeah.
He missed about 6 inches.
Yeah. I mean, even at 36.
At least in the 42 range, because at what did he say it was?
He said it was 36.
36 and 55 inches, it would look way skinnier than what it is.
Yeah.
He probably missed 5 or 6 inches, but nope. That's a great fish. Anything over 51, 52, 53 inches, you start getting into that mega size.
Yeah. The thing, with the calculation, he came out, it came out at 90 point something. And with the scale, we couldn't get the scale to lock out because, quite frankly, I don't think he could hold it steady enough with all that weight on it. But, it was 92 or 93 minus, after you take the net off. But it was pretty close,
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are only certain body types, certain silhouettes that
Mhm.
the equation is off on, and one of them is definitely the older fish with the gigantic skulls, and you don't normally see that. I've only had like two of them, three of them with the overly huge skulls, like that last one that I caught, just gigantic mouth, gigantic head. You know, the tail is wore off. I mean, but once they start to not fit that silhouette, that the equation is really kind of, you know, it'll be off 6, 8, 10% each way. You know, either too much or too little, but most of them fit that normal body silhouette. It's not until you get to the really old fish that really have that slow growth, and their bottom jaws are just huge, as you know, size of a Red Bull can, and you know, you get all that other stuff. The other ones that are approaching, you know, in the high 90s, low hundreds, they usually don't have a proportionately huge head. They have more of the, you know, that beluga whale look to them.
Right.
You know, and then I've caught some smaller fish that were way off the chart as far as body style. You know, blues with big heads, skinny bodies. You got little heads, gigantic bodies. I mean, but by and large, the equation is pretty darn spot on. Every time I've weighed one against the thing, it's within 2 or 3 pounds, or sometimes dead on.
Yeah, I say we were in the ballpark, so he probably had it pretty close to being right, but he admitted that he didn't get it. He didn't believe that he got it at the widest point.
Well, I would say Art's fish falls in the weight category of big ass fish. That's what I say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a giant fish.
Tonight, it's a night none of us will forget, I'm sure.
No.
I was just as happy for him as he was, you know, just to see him, you know.
Yeah, I didn't. He didn't answer the phone the other day, but I called to congratulate him personally on that fish. I try to do that with a lot of people that catch monsters. I try to say, hey, you know, what a fantastic fish, attaboy, you know, do all that stuff, ask him a few questions and all that. But you know, it's possible I'll get to have some time to call him again this week.
Now you talked to him the night right after he caught, not too long after he caught it.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, but I was gonna kind of ask him a couple other questions. I guess I did. It's kind of late that night. I do remember that.
Do you remember who told you about it?
Probably you. Probably, yeah. I think you sent me the picture.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I might have been asking you to come on the show, and then then someone sent me a text saying that he caught that fish, and I told you, and I went and watched and released it. It's what I saw part of him releasing it.
Yeah,
that might have been during the time that my shoulder was hurting so bad. I was drinking a few just to dull the pain down a little bit, because I was on the highest painkillers I could be on, and it was still keeping me up at night. So I'm not sure if I necessarily have all my details correct.
Yeah. It's either Curtis or Eric one messaged me, the brothers, that he caught that fish.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll say he was. I was thrilled that you called him, that you took the time out to call him and talk to him.
Oh yeah, he's a good kid.
Yeah,
he's a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're gonna be fishing with him again Friday night. He's coming over.
Awesome.
We'll be throwing the frozen sucker.
Oh, and I was that, you know, and you know what? Now that you said sucker, that's the reason I called him the last time, because he had called and questioned me about. He's like, "Where do you find these suckers at?"
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "Well, it's not easy, but you got to find like a clear, faster water moving thing, you know, that's got a what." And man, he's on the suckers now.
Yeah.
And as far as the bait fish, I think they're one of the most fun ones to catch, because they fight to the death.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to use heavier line, because if I use too light a line and like a crappie rig on them,
Mhm.
they'll exhaust themselves to where they won't live. You know, you
Huh.
got to about horse them to the bank, get them in the net, get them in the live well, or they'll
Yeah.
end up going belly up on you.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Yeah, I've got about 10 of them in my tank outside right now, just waiting for
Wow.
yeah. I took a little bit of time, gosh, maybe a week ago, because I got a whole new bait system going. And, you know, I've had 10 different ones, but I think this is finally the one, because when I was at CatCon, I was able to buy one of those Coca-Cola coolers, remember, in the big aisleway? Well, they had a busted one, and the top was broke off. And I asked the guy, I said, hey, any chance I could buy one of them off you? He goes, well, I got a guy that's in charge of that. And he's like, yeah, we're getting rid of this one, and this one. I said, well, I'll take the biggest one you got. And so we cleaned out the entire van space and rolled that thing in last minute, threw everything in it, because I mean, it took up the whole back of the van. It's a big thing, but it's insulated. It's got wheels. It's got a drain, and now I've got an aquarium filter that's one of those giant canister filters for a 500-gallon aquarium, and then I've got a freezer that I've got a pump that is thermostatically controlled to 55 degrees. Well, I'll probably put it at about 57. But so it exchanges the water, and it also filters so that I can keep those, because my garage gets hot. I mean, it's not a garage, it's a 40 by 60 machine shed, and it gets 100 degrees in there, and them suckers, they don't do too good over about 60 degrees. So now, and I knew I was going to have to do it, because I wasn't going to be able to, with the business thing that I'm doing now, I wouldn't be able to like leave on a Friday afternoon, go get bait, bring it home, just for a one trip. So I'm going to have to take that same time and catch 20, 25 suckers, bring them all home, and have them all live. Now, the one thing I did learn is I can't keep common carp with those suckers, because those common carp are so rambunctious and rough, they just beat up on them. So I'll have to engage. So now I'll have that 500-gallon going, and then I'll have my 1,000-gallon going. So my electricity bill is going to be sky high, but keeping the carp with the suckers just doesn't work. I can keep large chubs and shiners with the suckers, and that works out good. And we actually caught some 50-pounders on a live last season on some of those river shiners that are about like that, and they're about that tall in the early part of the season. So they're worth taking, and I have access to them. So not a regular chub. They're I think I kind of put a picture of one up on one of my TikToks. So I think on a short on YouTube too, so you guys can see what it looks like. Is farm raised fish different than regular fish? William Warner Pork Chop. Farm raised fish are different in a way. Now, most farm raised fish, their genetics comes from the Red River in Oklahoma, believe that or not. So most of the farm raised fish studies that I've read, they talk about the original DNA lineage coming from the Red River. And I have no idea why they would have done such a thing, because Red River fish in Oklahoma are not known for exponential growth, especially channel cats. Maybe the blues are fine, but but that's what they had to work with. And so they have fiddled with these farm raised fish almost like dogs and cats now for probably 50 years. Farm raised fish, a lot of them are hybrids now between blues and channel cats. They're unable to hybridize flatheads because their genome is too far away. They just don't. They just can't mesh, even in a laboratory. And why would they want to? Because flatheads are so ornery, they outgrow each other when they're little and end up eating their tank mates or their pond mates or whatever. They're kind of self-limiting. So now We've got strains of catfish that have been kind of manipulated with blue cat genes to become a little bit beefier, a little bit more aggressive. I had a, God, was that an F1 or an F4? It's been so long. So F1 means Furcatus. That's what the F stands for, and Furcatus is blue cat. And then the one, so they had F1, F2, F3, and F4, and that means that you take a female blue cat and you introduce sperm from a male channel cat, and then that offspring, and then they'll go another time. So the first one is the closest to a blue cat, and then the second one, if they keep doing the male channel cat, or they reverse it, so it means first generation, second, third, and fourth. And I had one that a DNR guy gave to me, and that thing was aggressive and grew really fast. I mean, it was just meaner than shit. I couldn't believe it. As opposed to a regular channel cat, they're pretty docile. The ones that you get, you grow up in a tank, and shoot, I've raised them from a pound to upwards of 10 pounds just in aquariums, and they're just like little pets. But man, these freaking hybrids were just rough. I mean, eat everything that wasn't nailed down, fight, bite, and almost act like a flathead, but there's no flathead genes in there. They are a bit different. Some of them have been genetically modified. I wouldn't hazard to know which ones have. I've been out of that, in touch with the fish farming and all that stuff for a long time. But they are different, but yet they're the same, because even through breeding, genetics, and things like that, you still have that behavioral instinct, that imprint that is so strong that it doesn't change a catfish. The same farm raised catfish, if you dumped them in a river, would be just fine.
Excellent. Well, we're coming up on the 3-hour mark here, so if anybody has any questions, drop them quickly, or we're going to let Tim get some sleep.
Yep. It's going to be early and a long day tomorrow.
Hey, I did have one question for you. Since you mentioned Michael Murillo.
Yeah.
How's your uvula?
My uvula is fat like a sock full of rice. I got to say, I just want to reach in with the bait scissors and just cut it off.
Yes.
That is the cause of my snoring.
For those that don't know, after Saturday night at CatCon, we had a little get together up in Michael Murillo's room, and Tim had an interesting discussion about the uvula. So it was quite funny.
Yeah, that was a good time. Oh man, Bex had a time with it, didn't she?
Oh yeah, yep. So, you got any more seminars coming up in the near future anywhere?
Well, not that I know of. Maybe next CatCon. I don't know. I don't think. Okay. I don't think Steve has contacted me about any future ones.
Right.
But I would say the next one's going to be a lot like the other ones, but probably more epic, because I'm probably going to work on more picture type stuff to go with it. I was going to try to do that last time, but I just didn't have time. But if I have enough time, I can do more of a good narrative that lets people see at the same time what I'm talking about. Because I'm a visual person, and a lot of people are. So they're going to really understand some things. If you can show them, what you're talking about actually on a diagram screen at the same time you're talking about it.
Right.
I'd like to thank G. Stein for asking all these questions.
Yeah.
He's been very good at that.
When using live bream, When do you change live bait up for flatheads? Well, if sometimes I don't very much, even if they've been hit, as long as they're still, pretty loud. But if I go into an area that is on my milk run for giants, and they haven't been showing a proclivity for eating cut bait or even eating just kind of the docile baits, if they're hammering that really aggressive bait and they're hitting it good, I'll change bait quite a bit, and sometimes I'll even throw a hybrid, because hybrids, if you guys know anything about hybrid bluegill, they took a green sunfish and they crossed it with a regular strain bluegill, and they have like a checkerboard appearance, and they're really tough and really they're just a loud, obnoxious bait. And so I like hybrids, and sometimes I'll even throw in a white bass. If I could use all white bass or all yellow bass, I would, but I can't. So because I've caught some really giant fish on white bass. I've had really tough days and only had 2 white bass, and they hit those with a vengeance because they're constantly aggravating the central nervous system of a flathead. And I do kind of like that.
Okay.
Uncle Jeep has a comment.
Yes, the old school. Yeah. And they do. I really enjoyed making them. I really enjoyed having them because they keep me on track too. There's so many things I want to talk about. And sometimes I start going down kind of a Zen road, and I got to remember to bring it back into like hands-on reality stuff. So, the props actually help me do that, because, I might start, talking about stuff that nobody's really interested in, because I'm a fish nerd, but, so I got to keep it kind of on track. So it does, it kind of snaps me into the moment. I get to look. I used to have these, way back in the day when I started sharing information about catfishing. It was kind of a different day, and people would be like, well, how do you know? You can't see down there. They were just kind of, abrasive or aggressive with their questioning and, all this stuff. And every once in a while you get a couple people like that. And I said, well, because I am paying attention like a blind person does with Braille or with anything else. I'm paying attention to my line every time it goes down, what it's thumping on. I'm trying to make a guess as to what I think it looks like. I'm triangulating it. I'm fishing these spots enough. I know where the root ball lays. I know where I have a fish finder. I can do all this stuff. And so I can get this mental picture in my head, but then I can draw it, and then I can create it. And then, in sort of a generic sort of way, that so people can get this idea of what I'm thinking when I'm approaching a spot. It was catfish, Cameron. It was. And it got hammered. I mean, hammered. Ooh. That still haunts me.
Yeah, I was watching that one when it happened. Wow.
Yep. Don't care about the rod. Don't care about the reel. It's the fish that haunts me.
You almost went out the back of the boat jumping for that rod.
Oh, buddy, I'll tell you what. Wow. Wow.
Let me see. All right. Michelle has a comment for you. Michelle is, it's all mine is Michelle. It's my missus. So she's talking about the catfish. So as I said earlier, no catfish, no kitchen. So
your wife doesn't appreciate the art in that thing? Holy moly.
I know. I don't understand it.
Okay,
I was kind of hoping
that thing took like 4 hours to paint. It has like 9 layers. It has transparent paint that you can see through. And the overall color scheme of that fish is the yellow, green, brown, which is commonly found in most parts of the country, but especially the Mississippi River and other areas like that, especially with that the jeans that came right straight from the Mississippi River. And that fish actually is about, let's see, that's a 4-foot version. And that 4-foot version, if it were real, would weigh approximately 54, 55, 56, 57 pounds, somewhere about that. And Tom's wife, that happens to be a female in body style.
Well, I told her I was kind of hoping that at the next cat con you were going to do the blues so that I could have a set.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I probably will.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
I've got the blues in just the straight up, like more of a wall mount type, sideways, but I am going to do some blues that are like the flatheads that are the top silhouette.
Excellent.
Oh, G style. I really do prefer a thinner wire hook. I think that matters probably more than anything about what you're talking about. And here it is. If people can't, well, everybody can read it, so I don't have to read it. But I do like a thinner. I used them for years. The Team Catfish 7/0 circled chunk lights, which is, I think they called them double action after that. And they were still fine. The one thing that, and this is going to sound weird, with live baits, I prefer to use the lightest weight possible. And I choose to not set up so far that I'm really haranguing those live baits, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll do it if I have to, because maybe I've got a spot where I need to be close and then I've got a far spot. I'll do it. But I don't usually like, with live baits, using a sinker more than about 3 ounces. And the reason being is that the force that the fish, and I wince every time, and I've got a nice big bluegill and it side slaps on the water. I'm like, oh, that had to hurt, And then the fish floats down and you can tell he's not even wiggling. He's not wiggling at the bottom. And you're like, oh, geez, I about killed him. They'll eventually come back out of it. But I try to create a soft landing, and sometimes it's futile. But sometimes you can, by not super lofting. You just kind of do that medium range, kind of a nice little, kind of a lob cast, very much like in my last flathead video. So if you can think, matter of fact, I was even left hand tossing those, so I felt like I was casting like a girl, but honestly, that's pretty much the best way to do it. And I don't mean to sound bad, but if I throw a ball with my, I throw just like my wife. I try to throw a baseball with my left hand, so I guess that's legitimate. But yeah, you just taking it and you just sort of launching it like this. It's probably the easiest thing on those live baits, just to present them in a short lobby fashion. Not too much weight and not too big of a diameter of a hook. Now, the hook can be big, just so long as it's a little bit thinner wire. Now, like that 16-aught monster I've got in there, that's blue cats only. I would never use that for flatheads.
Now, where do you hook the bait to get it to stay alive?
Okay, under the adipose area, above the spine area. It's basically that fatty part. I wish I had my little thing, but you got your bait fish, mouth's over here, tail's over here, and then you got where the dorsal fin is, right behind where the dorsal fin is, right in that little meat pocket. That's what I try to do. I try not to hook them too shallow or too deep. Too shallow, and I'm casting them off. That's no good. You're just feeding flatheads free food, and and too deep, it's just, it's like stabbing them in the heart, I guess. If you use minnows, anybody who's used minnows knows you hit them in the wrong spot, they're worthless. Same thing with bluegill.
Yeah.
Now, I will hook them in the forehead once in a while, the meaty part of the forehead. Now, that's when I need to harangue a bait. if I need to, do the old Happy Gilmore cast, I usually do not hook them in the tail area. I'll hook them in the forehead. It's much tougher. I don't like it for attractiveness because they're not fighting against it like this. Like if that weight's here and their tail's here and the hook is right there, they'll do a whole bunch of this. Hooked in the forehead, they won't. Those sort of lay there. But it's either I re-anchor, or you just got to throw it out there to get to them, because a lot of times flatheads won't come to you.
Right.
Sometimes they will, but most time they won't. Now, in Jodi's situation, because I haven't fished the Tennessee River enough, but as much as I've been watching, it seems, and I'm not talking Jodi in specific, I'm just talking Tennessee River in general. It seems that they will move in like these loose boundary areas of deep water that you're not really throwing it in their face. You're not like specifically targeting a specific area. You're just sort of throwing in a general area and hoping that they move to you. My take on hooks and line: thin wire hooks and mono line, thick, heavy duty hooks, heavy braid to drive that hook home. Well, and I would say that would probably be correct, Stan. I'm not a fan of heavy braid because of where I fish and the kinds of things that I do. Now, if I had open basin holes, fairly open, maybe a little bit of wood, maybe a little bit of whatever, but a fairly heavy population, I wouldn't mind braid at all. I use it on the bridge, but as soon as that braid contacts the trestle bridge that I fish, it's over. There is no coming out of that. There's no getting it back. It's a mess. And to take braid into that jungle, I've done it, but I don't like it, because if I get hooked up, it's a mess. The other thing I don't like about braid is it buries in the spool. Even thick braid. But, it's whatever people have confidence in. I never downgrade anybody else's stuff ever. Never. Because, they're the ones that are dealing with it, and there's different styles and different people and different whatever. And I'm like, oh, if it works for you, that's awesome. I'm not the guy that's going to, sit down in a restaurant, talk to you about your catfish and tell you you're doing it all wrong. I think everybody's doing it right for themselves. Now, if they have questions and they want to learn, the only thing I can do is tell them what I do, and they can make up their own mind, or what I've done in the past, or what my experience is with my style, where I fish, whether it's beneficial or not beneficial. So, kind of taking a look at that, because really, we all have our preferences. We all have feelings. We all have, desires to do better or not, I've talked to some guys that honestly, they're not very good. And I'm not talking about YouTube guys. I'm talking about real life people. They'll tell you they're the greatest catfisherman in the world, but they're terrible. And I'm just like, yeah, you must be the greatest catfisherman in the world. You're pretty convinced of it yourself. I don't say that, but I'm like, oh, okay. Everybody's, everybody has a point. It's all valid, but you just got to figure out who to listen to, I guess.
Well, I have one question left, and then we'll let you go. Full moon, good, bad, or doesn't make a difference?
Hate it for flatheads. I hate it especially when flatheads are shallow and when the moon breaches over the trees. Okay. I used to make it a point to always fish the full moon to figure this out. It's awesome in a full moon at night. I can drive that boat anywhere. I can see the smallest stick. I can jump logs and do whatever I got to do. But it is never, ever in all my days fishing have I ever got on a good bite. I've caught fish during the full moon, even if it breached, but most of the time the bite dies. I may catch 5 flatheads before that moon comes up, and it's only 9:30 at night here when the moon comes up, and then it goes blank. I mean blank. Probably 90% of the time. Wow. Now, I have not noticed that same thing for blues. But I fish deeper for blues than I do flatheads by far.
Mhm.
You know, now, would I necessarily fish for blues on a shallow flat during a full moon? I don't know. I don't usually fish shallow flats for, you know, blues anyway. Maybe I'm missing out. There's guys that do, and there's guys that catch big fish doing that. But as far as the confidence in me betting on myself to go land a monster on a full moon, once that moon's over the trees and during flathead season, I have almost no confidence in that at all. Will I do it? Because, you know, I'd rather fish than not. Yeah, but I can pretty much tell you that it's going to be fairly terrible. Blues, I mean, full moon or, you know, 3/4 moon, I've caught some giants. But then again, I'm fishing 30, 40, 50, 60 foot deep.
Yeah. All right.
You know, I fish for blues at night 70, 80, 90 feet too. You know, and I've got flats available, and I've got flats that I can throw onto the flat at the same time as I fish off the ledge and in the deep water, and I almost never catch them on the flat. Sometimes I will, but not very often. Not to the rate at which I catch monsters in that deeper water zone consistently.
All right. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. Jodi, you want to talk about tomorrow night?
Oh, the Flathead Challenge? Yep.
Yeah.
Starts at 10. And we have a full house again. We've got Mike's Fishing Home, Catfish and Curtis, Danny Stone Outdoors, 217 Rebel Outdoors, and he's fishing with AK, Daryl Trophy Seeker Outdoors, Jeremy Tournament Cats, Steve Adams, Big Skip, and Catfish Biking.
Excellent.
So it's definitely a full house, and 2 stands to be hosting.
Well, I hope I get to see that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Should be a good fun time.
All right. David Smith snuck in one more question. I promise this is the last one, and we'll let you go. Barometer pressure and water temp make a difference? Question.
They do, and I'll try to answer this as quickly as possible. I'd rather have low pressure than high pressure, even though I've caught big fish in high pressure, but I catch way more big fish in low pressure. Water temperature, I just need it to be in a range. I need it to be over somewhere in the 60 range, all the way up to about 80, 81 is fine with that. I do not like a quick drop in temperature. I don't mind a fast rise in temperature. That seems to fire them up, but you know, you get them rising on temperature and all of a sudden you drop that temperature 4, 5, 6 degrees, and a cold-blooded creature just sort of goes into like shutdown.
Excellent. All right. I think that does it for the questions, and we want to thank you for giving us your time. I really enjoyed it, Tim.
Thanks for having me on. Holy moly.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Jodi?
Yeah, I want to thank you for coming on. Had a great time. You had a great guest, and you know, chats loved you, and had plenty of questions. Learned a lot.
Yeah, they did. I always love the how the chat always has really good questions. I really like that. It tells me that they're really thinking about it, you know, and I know that they all know something about. I mean, they're just not saying, "Hey, what about this?" They have their experiences, and they're basically asking, "What's my view of it?" Because they know that I fish a different area than they do, and you know, the more knowledge, the better.
Yeah.
Right. Well, all right, everybody. Appreciate you. Yep. Appreciate everybody coming in. And I think at one point I saw we had up to 65 people, and I think that's a record for the show.
Nice.
If there were more, I didn't see it, but that's the highest number that I did see. And we appreciate that, you being here, and hopefully maybe we do it again another night.
Yeah, we should.
Excellent.
All righty.
All right, well, we're going to shut it down. Don't leave, Tim. Stay on, so we can say goodbye.
All right.
All right, everybody, thank you, and we'll see you hopefully next Wednesday night. Good night now.